Okay, good evening, everybody.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to call to order the May 6th regular meeting of the school committee. It's nice to have a lot of folks here tonight joining us. We typically start our meetings with a public comment period. I believe there are 11 commenters who have signed up, which we usually limit to 10, but I guess one extra won't hurt here. We have 9 folks in the room who would like to make public comment and 2 folks virtually. You'll have 3 minutes to make your statement. When you are called, please come up to the chair up front here, or if you're online, you'll be recognized. Please make sure your name is visible to the host. Emily will give you a 30-second warning after 2.5 minutes. This is an opportunity for us to hear directly from the community, something that we value. Please know, though, that we are not going to be responding to you in real time, but we certainly take your thoughts and concerns seriously. You also always have the option to reach out to us directly. Our phone numbers and emails are all listed on the Newton School Committee website. So with that, we'll take our first public comment from Jessica Shin. And that is followed by Gilam Biswas. And I apologize if I've butchered any names there.
Good evening. I am the parent of a 4th grader and a kindergartner at Mason Rice. I am also an educator of young adults and school-age children. I am deeply concerned about some of the issues my students deal with on a regular basis, including anxiety, extreme sleep deprivation, and a lack of focus. I know cyberbullying is also a problem that students face today. I believe that one major driver of these problems is the ubiquity of smartphones in places of learning. I cannot imagine how difficult it is to be a student in a classroom, distracted by the endless array of notifications and videos that their phone provides, whether it is in their pocket, backpack, or individual locker. I can imagine how difficult it is for a teacher to manage a classroom of children who may have brought their smartphones to school and who must now compete with these devices that were designed specifically to place a monopoly on our attention. I want our Newton students to be engaged, curious, thoughtful, and focused. I would love our children to be in classrooms and lunchrooms and at school events that require actual human engagement, attention spans that allow for critical thinking, and joyful real-world interaction. I have spoken to many parents, and we all hope that NPS creates a sound district-wide phone policy that allows for an ideal learning environment for our children and the most effective teaching environment for our educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gilam Biswas, and that's followed by Clara Felice.
Thank you to the school committee for this opportunity. My name is Gilam Biswas. I am the mother of a 2nd grader and a kindergartner at Zervis. Today, I want to address a pressing issue, a standardized policy for smartphones in schools. As a brief introduction, I'm a forensic psychiatrist. I'm the president-elect of the Massachusetts Psychiatric Society, and I work at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, where I direct the program in psychiatry, law, and society. I have also worked in college mental health for several years. As a parent and a psychiatrist, I'm deeply concerned about the impact of fast-growing and largely untested smartphone technology on our school-aged children during critical years of brain development. We now know excessive smartphones use impacts mental health, cognitive development, attention, social skills, and physical health. There is a well-documented uptick in mental illness among adolescents and young people over the past decade. The data shows that worldwide, the wave of mental illness began in the 2010s when the oldest of the Gen Z generation hit puberty. Rates of anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicidal behaviors all suddenly increased. This generation was the first to experience childhood and puberty through smartphones and unfettered internet and social media access, likely contributing to all of this. In today's digital era, key cognitive skills such as managing boredom, daydreaming, taking healthy risks, having spontaneous social interactions, focusing on tasks, and resting are underdeveloped. The constant stimulation of smartphone apps deliver frequent dopamine hits to the brain, ultimately making children anxious and irritable during quieter and less structured moments. We also know that smartphone-based activities for sustained periods contribute to social isolation, sleep deprivation, and problems with attention. Spending time away from these devices while at school can help the brain mitigate these cravings. Think of it as detox for the mind. As physicians, we cannot stand silent in the face of this medical evidence. We also understand many parents' strong desires to remain connected to their children after school. In a world where landlines and payphones are becoming obsolete, communication methods such as flip phones and kid-safe
You have
smartwatches
30 seconds.
without notifications are reasonable alternatives. Many parents feel pressure to buy their children a smartphone to stay connected to peers who have a smartphone. We must tackle this issue as a larger community of parents, teachers, and administrators. Newton Public School has tremendous opportunity to lead here by implementing programs restricting smartphone use in schools and demonstrating those benefits. We can help create similar policies statewide, benefiting countless students in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Biswas. I'm noting the irony of Emily timing your
know, I
public
know.
comment on a smartphone.
On my smartphone. Oh, I know.
Our next speaker is Clara Felice, followed by Alex Pescal.
I actually printed something out, so I'm not using my smartphone for this.
modeling.
Hi, everyone. My name is Clara Felice. I'm a mother of a kindergartner and a second grader at Mason Rice, and I'm also a pediatrician. And I want to echo some of the comments my colleagues have made about the importance of cell phone policy in schools, and particularly given what we've learned over the last 10 years about the impacts on health and well-being of our kids. So as we know, everybody sees our kids in an environment saturated by media use. Smartphones just further exacerbates that by putting it in their hands. Media use by tweens, those that are 8 to 12, and teens grew faster in the 2 years since COVID than the 4 years before that, and we've only seen acceleration after that point. So smartphone use has been linked to an array of health conditions that I've seen in my patients, myself, and all my colleagues do as well. Everything related to depression, anxiety, and related disorders, obesity and cardiovascular disease, sleep interference, delays in learning, and exposure to risky behaviors and cyberbullying. And that's just the small list of a much longer list, unfortunately. It's not just even the amount or the content necessarily of cell phone use, but it's also the fact that extensive screen time crowds out other important socio-emotional developmental opportunities, engaging in physical activity, talking to real people in real situations, problem solving with your friends in real life, using your brain to solve problems instead of seeking immediate answers, practicing age-appropriate skill development related to making independent decisions. All of these things are being crowded out by cell phone use. We also know that kids are using their cell phones and during learning time for other purposes. Just to name a couple of studies, college kids recently surveyed said they spend 20% of their time in class doing non-related class activities on their cell phones. 90% of teens and preteens in the last year that were surveyed report spending about 45 minutes a day on their cell phones during school time, primarily for social media, gaming, and YouTube. I don't want this for my kids. I don't think any of us want this for their kids when we're supposed to be learning in school. Just to further it, they're not only using their phones proactively, but they're getting about 237 notifications per day on average, about a quarter of which arrive during the school day. And a lot of them are not things that need to be immediately addressed. Not surprisingly, school districts around the country are responding to this. Even as early as 2020, about 97% of middle schools, high schools, and combined schools had some sort of cell phone policy in place, which is progress. And principals strongly believe that this was really helping kids learn.
You have 30 seconds.
So I think there's also, just to emphasize, we are still learning about this. The evidence is not perfect, but I don't think we can wait for perfect to act. There have been recent studies in particular about bans in middle schools, a really particularly vulnerable time for our students, that have shown higher grades, especially for students with lower socioeconomic backgrounds, fewer consultations with mental health professionals, less bullying, more learning, more attention, and less time the teachers have to spend wrangling the kids off their cell phones throughout the day. So in summary, as a pediatrician and importantly, as a parent of children who are going to grow up in this new era, I really want to strongly encourage us to lead the way in developing sound policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Police. Our next speaker is Alex Pascal, followed by Gary Alpert.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Tonight, I'm not speaking to you as a psychologist or a physician, but in two other roles that start with a P, a policymaker and a parent. I'm the father of a fourth grader and a first grader at Mason Rice, and I've served in the federal government for over a decade, most recently in the Biden administration, where I led the administration's policy on technology and youth mental health. Like other speakers here tonight, I'm deeply concerned about the adverse effects of internet-enabled devices, particularly smartphones, on young people's mental health, social and emotional growth, and academic learning. My concern arises from the massive evidence I've reviewed and upon which I've made policy, as well as the painful meetings I've had with frustrated educators who want to throw up their hands, with students who feel helpless to resist their smartphones, and with parents who have literally lost children to social media. A year ago, the Surgeon General of the United States issued an advisory, his strongest possible warning, about the harms of social media on youth mental health and well-being. The research is abundant and pretty clear, if not perfect. It's more than ample to act. The presence of smartphones in K-12 schools is bad for students' learning and bad for their mental health, especially in the developmentally critical years of middle school. A study last year from Common Sense Media found that 97% of kids use their phones during school hours, and they say that school cell phone policies aren't consistent and aren't enforced. We know thousands of students, educators, and parents in Newton and millions nationwide are struggling with this. The problem is daunting, but it is far from hopeless. From Vermont to Utah to New York City to Orange County, Florida, other school districts, cities, states, and countries have already taken action, restricting or banning smartphone use on school grounds. It is being done. It has been done, just elsewhere. A Boston Globe article just a week ago highlighted recent research showing that school cell phone bans in Norway resulted in fewer student mental health issues, less bullying, big academic gains for girls, and improved equity as students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds saw the most benefits. The research also found that the stricter the smartphone ban in the school, the greater the benefits for students. Newton prides itself on the quality of the education it provides its students and their social emotional learning. So it should be a leader in this space. We can do something. There are plenty of practical, common sense, low-cost solutions.
You have 30 seconds.
I'm glad NPS ran pilots on smartphones this year, but we must do more. NPS needs robust and consistent cell phone policy in school for all NPS schools that prioritizes student learning and mental health. As a policymaker and a parent, I strongly encourage the school committee and NPS to be ambitious and develop such policy for the upcoming school year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gary Alpert, followed by Debbie Barrickman.
Good evening, members of the school committee. On behalf of Understanding Our Differences, I would like to express our deep appreciation for the recent resolution thanking our nonprofit organization, which you passed unanimously on April 9. We also appreciate the gratitude expressed in each of the members' thoughtful remarks for the many years of groundbreaking disability awareness programming UOD provided for the Newton Public Schools. Tonight, I would like to express a broad thank yous of our own as I expand the nature of 45 years of partnership with NPS, so thoughtfully appreciated in your resolution. First, I would like to express our deepest thanks to the many NPS administrators and professional staff who participated with our own professional staff in ongoing assessment and evaluation of our curriculum over the years. These included NPS superintendents, assistant superintendents, school nurses, classroom teachers, speech pathologists, principals, occupational therapists, and school psychologists, among many others. Thanks are also due to NPS staff and administrators who specifically requested Understanding Our Differences develop additional units on learning disabilities, allergic condition, and autism. These units and others were piloted and tested in the classrooms here, with feedback solicited and implemented. UOD also added at their request and suggested specific anti-bullying language and activities in all Understanding Our Differences units. More recently, we especially thank the assistant superintendent who during COVID urgently requested our participation in developing remote learning opportunities for students. As a result, UOD invested in, developed, and successfully presented Zoom-based versions of the program to students across the district, a format still being implemented today in other schools and districts. Of course, we appreciate you, the school committee, for approving budgets allocating $63,500 to defray some of the costs of delivering a curriculum with 10 modules across grades 2 to 5 in 15 elementary schools. To support this work and these costs, we must also thank the Newton residents who so believed in the importance of our program that they donated to and volunteered for our nonprofit each year to cover the additional expenses of delivering the NPS program.
You have 30 seconds. Oh, you're done.
Perfect timing.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Next speaker is Debbie Barrickman, followed by April Cowan.
Good evening. Continuing on Gary's comments on behalf of Understanding Our Differences, last but not least, we must convey an enormous thanks to the many Newton residents who served enthusiastically as a speaker for the Newton program over the years. Each speaker received a small honorarium for their time, skill, and participation. Not too many people feel comfortable speaking about themselves to audiences of up to 100 elementary schoolers. Generally, our speakers were high school students and older. For example, students at the CAPS program, formerly EDCO, at Newton North, who spoke for our deafness and hard of hearing unit. On occasion, a student in an elementary school classroom volunteered to be the speaker for a particular unit. We carefully supported this choice, working closely with the parents, student, and inclusion facilitators. These students found their participation transformative and almost immediately experienced significant changes in inclusion and understanding from classmates. Through sharing their stories and answering students' questions, our amazing speakers brought their unique, authentic voices as individuals with disabilities to curious elementary school students who, in a developmentally appropriate way, notice differences and seek information and understanding. Students in the classroom with the same disability often felt an extra connection and great empowerment when meeting someone who could share their experiences in school and beyond. We cannot thank our speakers of all ages enough. We undertook all of this work determined to assist NPS in creating a school system and a community built on inclusion. The contributions of Understanding Our Differences have made Newton a remarkably welcoming community for people of all abilities, as your resolution states. We urge you, the school committee, to make certain to restore disability awareness education that is ongoing, robust, and expertly delivered across the Newton schools. Its absence is noted this year, and the need for it remains urgent.
You have 30 seconds.
Going forward and expanding upon our expertise, Understanding Our Differences is dedicated to continuing our mission in this community and beyond in new and creative ways in collaboration with other nonprofits and institutions in Newton. Once again, many thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is April Cowan. Followed by that, it's just says Project 351, but I assume we have a point person to make comments there.
Hi, my name is April Cowan. I am the mother of two girls, one at Pierce and one at Day. I'm here tonight to voice my support for the continuation and expansion of the Yonder Pouch program for all Newton Public Schools. For those of you who don't know, the Yonder Pouch program requires all students who have smart devices such as cell phones, watches, and AirPods to lock them in a pouch for the duration of the school day. Yonder pouches were used in over 2,000 American schools last year. As you will hear from Principal Mann, it has been a very successful pilot program this year at Day. In her April 29th newsletter, she said, the staff has reported almost no negative interactions, decreases in bullying around social media, and more student focus in the classrooms. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder. And based on my own research, other schools across the country have had similar success stories to Day Middle School, specifically increased student engagement in the classroom, less time spent in bathrooms and hallways, more genuine connections within the community, and a decrease in reports of cyberbullying. My research has also indicated that in school emergencies, such as in the worst case scenario, a school shooting, students need to focus on the trained adults present in the building. You do not want children taking out devices and contacting parents. That is the exact opposite of safety protocols. I encourage parents to read Jonathan Haidt's recently released book, The Anxious Generation, which puts the science behind the negative impacts of smart devices in our schools. As he says, our children are now forever elsewhere. As a parent, the removal of smart devices from our schools is an important step to support our students, teachers, and administrators in the goal of bringing our children's attention back into the classroom and engaging with their friends in the real world, not in the virtual world.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Project 351. And then that will be followed by Enrique Rosero.
Minutes times 4.
Hello, school committee. We are the 4 Project 51 representatives from Newton this year. My name is Amelia Kessler, and I am from FAD Middle School.
I'm Yasmin Salim, and I'm at Oak Hill Middle School.
Hi, I'm Melina Petropoulos. I'm from Day Middle School.
Hello, my name is Ariel Hollander, and I'm from Oak Hill Middle School. Project 351 is a nonprofit organization founded by Governor Deval Patrick that empowers 8th graders from all 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts to make positive changes in their communities. Each city or town is assigned 1 or more ambassadors to represent it. We are the selected Newton ambassadors.
The spring clothing drive hosted by a Newton leadership team ran from March 25th to April 5th. To promote the drive and spread the word, we used city social media websites and email newsletters. Our main goal was to collect clothing donations for children all around Massachusetts who were in need. Our donation spots were set up at the West Suburban YMCA, FAD Middle School, Brown Middle School, Oak Hill Middle School, and Temple Emmanuel.
Through the Project 351 organization, we had an incredible opportunity to participate in a large-scale clothing drive and make a difference in the lives of children across the state. We understood the urgency of our drive. About 1 in 3 children in Massachusetts experience clothing insecurity, an issue that no child or parent should ever have to face. Together, the Project 351 team collected over 5,500 bags of clothes, 64 of which we collected here in Newton. Our donations were distributed by Cradles to Crayons to kids across Massachusetts, giving them a fresh supply of clean clothes. Trying to make a real difference in the lives of those facing clothing insecurity, we work to embody the spirit of compassion and community that defines Project 351.
During the spring clothing drive, we developed various leadership skills such as responsibility, time management, and effective communication. We discovered the importance of raising awareness and spreading the word about our drive. As we expanded our efforts, we realized the power of collaboration and unity in creating lasting change. By working together with local businesses and organizations, we were able to reach even more individuals in need. The success of our clothing drive motivates us to continue making a positive impact in our community with the support of our peers. The enormous support we received from our community reaffirmed our belief in the kindness and generosity of others, inspiring us to keep striving for a better tomorrow. We would like to thank you for your help and advice during our time in Project 351 and encourage you to further support 351 ambassadors in the coming years from Newton.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next speaker is Enrique Rosero, and then we have two remote speakers, Robin Boger and Teresa Sorrentino.
Good evening. I'm represented by Mr. Levy from Ward 6. In an interview with WBUR promoting his self-published book, he stated, quote, "I think the sign of a good leader, and for that matter, any person who wants to improve, is you acknowledge your mistakes and you see that there are lessons to be drawn from them." For several months now, we have been asking this committee to reflect on actions and inactions that precipitated and aggravated the strike. No individual concrete mistakes have been publicly acknowledged yet. In chapter 9 of his book, What Happens When You Really Let Down Your Team, Mr. Levy writes that there should be a formal mechanism to save leaders from the natural tendency to have poor judgment about their own behavior or how it can be perceived, a common disease of CEOs and other leaders, he says. Quote, "Turns out, though, that the solution is pretty straightforward. It's based on ensuring that there is an independent performance review and governance structure that is sufficiently well constructed to protect you from your own errors. The simplest approach would be to require an annual 360-degree review as part of a leader's term in office." Unquote. Consequently, as his constituent, for the past 3 years, I have attempted to provide feedback whenever possible. So let me see the stats. The number of office hours held, 0. Number of meetings that he attended with the Mason Rice PTO, 0. Number of meetings attended with the Brown PTO so far, 0. Number of emails responded, 0. I acknowledge that it must be really hard to be accountable in person while living elsewhere than Newton for most of the year, but still not a great record for representation, not an example of good leadership. So until his final performance review at the ballot box comes, I am prepared to help him improve by reading over 300 performance reviews collected by City Council. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We'll move to our two virtual participants this evening. Stephen, do you have those?
Just one is online.
Oh, just one is online? Okay. Robin Boger, and if Teresa Sorrentino is online, please make your name visible to the host so that way he can promote you to a speaking role.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good, thank you. My name is Robin Boger, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. A bit of background, we've lived in Newton for nearly 50 years.
There's some feedback in the room here. Stephen, is that something we can fix easily? Or Stephen?
Is there someone online in the room? Yes, is
Yeah.
there, even if it's on your phone?
Yeah, please turn down all devices that would be
Mute.
mute the devices that would have the meeting, because that might be what we're hearing. Okay, should we try this again?
Okay.
All right, can you hear me now?
So,
Hello? Hello?
Yes, you don't have a second device in your or if you could put everything on mute, because I that might be where the feedback's coming from.
All right, in fact, I can, okay, I mean, I've never had this problem before, but everything is on. I'll just turn it off. Now, is there any problem now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we'll just it's a little difficult, but we'll make it work. So
All
please
right,
make your comments.
I will try to enunciate clearly. In fact, I will put my cell phone. I will hide it inside. All right. Let's try again. Can the clock start ticking anew?
Much better. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Loud and clear, yes.
All right. My name is Robin Boger, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. A bit of background. We've lived in Newton for nearly 50 years. I've had 3 children go through the system and have 2 grandchildren in Newton Public Schools now. I am speaking in opposition to opening Newton to school choice for the following reasons. 1, the false analogy of marginal cost trap. Comparing the increase in revenue Newton will receive from school choice with filling empty seats on the school bus is a false analogy. The marginal cost of educating students throughout their career changes over time because of structural factors. Increasing school enrollment is a case of discontinuous marginal cost because the demand for students to fill empty seats in elementary schools is different from the demand for students at middle and high school levels where classes may be already crowded. The changes in demand for students may actually result in an increase in marginal costs at higher levels of education, as the increase in aggregate enrollment may lead to the need for more classroom space and more teachers. 2, the selective applicant trap. Because the financial benefits of school choice are front-end loaded, it is easy to underestimate the long-term effects that may result from this policy decision. Unfortunately, no attempt has been made to model the impact of different numbers of students on the entire K-12 educational system. Given Newton's reputation for strong honors programs and for providing for special needs students, it's likely that the applicant pool will be oversubscribed in each of these categories. 3, the short-term benefit trap. This experiment is described as a small foray of accepting a limited number of students for 1 year. But as noted above, there have been no discussion of downstream effects. How will we be able to evaluate the ultimate cost benefits of opening Newton to school choice if we cannot identify and quantify the very real but deferred costs associated with increased enrollment? 4, the more is better trap. If 70 new students is a small foray, what numbers are associated with medium and large acceptance programs? And if the system becomes dependent upon additional school choice related revenue, and the consequences of increased enrollment are not realized for years, will this evolve into a Ponzi scheme where we need to keep increasing the number of additional students
30 seconds.
to pay the cost for those already admitted? Opening up Newton to school choice is a major step and deserves careful consideration. We need to see an analysis of assumptions made regarding students, both Newton and school choice applicants, risk levels and anticipated consequence for programs of various size at both middle and high schools. The school choice program appears to generate financial benefits with no immediate cost, but this is a very short-term perspective.
Thank you so much. Your time is up.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. And did our other remote? No. Okay. That will close our public comment period for this evening then, and we will move on to our superintendent's report.
All right, good evening, everyone. So nice to see so many folks here. Just a brief update. I'm happy to report that we had 3 profile of a graduate or profile of a learner sessions this week in our community. One with all of our 120 school leaders, one with our student groups at North and South, and one with our faculty groups, which were cross faculty groups from many different schools. We also Science Department Head Jerry Gagnon from South and I also visited Mendon Upton Regional High School to see what that school system is doing in taking their profile of a learner 10 years later and how they're using that to help students get into college, create portfolios of learning, and demonstrate mastery on the way to career choices. So it's been a very exciting week in terms of sort of future visioning for the Newton schools. I did want to announce to everyone, and this will go out also in our written materials in the district news, that our website vendor has been purchased by a new vendor. This is an opportunity for us to revise our total website for the Newton Public Schools. And I have received a lot of feedback about our website in my 10 months here. So this is your shot, Newton community. I'm going to ask for formal focus groups and a survey coming your way to talk about what are the things that have been effective for you and not effective with our website. So if that's been something concerning to you or celebratory to you, I'd love to hear from you in the future. And then finally, just by way of update, I want to continue to congratulate the high school students at North and South for putting on their student-led cultural celebration days. More recently, since we've had our last meeting, we've had a Deaf Culture Day, a Mental Health and Wellness Day, Jewish American Heritage Month has been celebrated. And last month, we had our Middle Eastern North African celebration, Student Leadership Day. So we are very excited about all of those student leadership events. And as a secondary part of the superintendent's update, I'd like to invite some special guests to join me from the Massachusetts Society of the Cincinnati to honor one of our teachers. And while they're getting settled, I'll just say a couple things. So obviously, our Newton educators lead all of our celebratory teams for math modeling students, music ensembles, robotics groups, Tenacity Challenge. Our staff devote incredible time, energy, and love to our Newton Public School students. And tonight, I want to share an honor that's been obtained by one of the Brown Middle School staff that is truly special. This award is going to one of our teachers, Sam McGraw, and he is the recipient of the 2024 Frederick Graham Award for the Teaching of History, given by the Massachusetts Society of the Cincinnati. And I don't think we've had a more dashing set of speakers to come to the school committee since I have been here. So the Massachusetts Society of the Cincinnati created this award to honor exemplary Massachusetts history teachers whose work inspires their students to study the American Revolution. They were particularly impressed with Sam's work over the years, such as including the Freedom Trail and the Shirley Eustace House in learning opportunities for students, as well as the interactive debate-focused classes, getting students to think about the larger issues facing participants. The Fred Graham Award honors late president of the Massachusetts Society and the late President General of the Society of the Cincinnati, Frederick W. Graham, who saw K-12 education as critical to the Society's mission. Let me introduce to you here tonight to honor Mr. McGraw, President of the Society, Herb Motley, and Registrar J. Archer O'Reilly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nolan. I hope I'm on there. I'm sure some of you answering the question, who are these guys from Ohio anyway? The Society of the Cincinnati is one of many hereditary societies in this country, but uniquely, we were founded by the participants in the Revolutionary War in 1783 at the end of the war. I sometimes refer to it as the Washington's Alumni Group. To be a member of the society, you must be a direct descendant of one of the officers in the Continental Army. Militias don't count, which my good wife complains about. Some of her New Jersey relatives aren't eligible. But anyway, the society consists of 14 individual societies, one for each of the original 13 colonies, and one for France, without of which we couldn't have done it. We're a very federal kind of organization. Each society operates independently, but we do have an umbrella general society in Washington where we try to coordinate a lot of these basic things. The society was formed for a couple of main reasons. One was they wanted to be paid, because most of the officers had not been paid during the Revolution. But more important, they were concerned with the families of their brothers in arms, where the breadwinner, the father, the officer in question, had either been killed in battle or had been so sufficiently wounded and disabled that they could no longer run a family farm, which was the most common, obviously the most common economic unit. And this continued for most of the 19th century. Once in my time here since 2005 on the Massachusetts Council, we had one member who was down on his uppers, and we decided that what we do is fill his fuel tank for the winter. And so this goes on. The other point was to keep the memory fresh of that vast event, which is how they referred to the battles they had just won. And this today is the primary interest of the Society of the Cincinnati in all our states. The important thing as to why the revolution is so important, and why we are struggling to make this information available to students as part of their curriculum. There are really four reasons. First, the American Revolution secured the independence of the United States from the Dominion of Great Britain. Second, we established a republic with a government dedicated to the interests of ordinary people rather than the interests of kings and aristocrats. We became, as John Adams' words, a government of laws rather than people. We created an American national identity, a sense of community based on shared history and culture, mutual experience, and belief in a common destiny. And finally, we committed the new nation to ideals of liberty, equality, natural and civil rights, and responsible citizenship, and made them the basics of a new political order. I'm reading this to you from a wonderful history of the revolution called Freedom, which I will show up to you, and this copy is going to go to Sam. This has been published, was published last fall by the Society of Cincinnati, and was written by a very gifted historian, Jack Warren, who is also our past executive director. So we are now, beyond awarding our great teachers like Sam, we are establishing an educational forum for Revolutionary War study and teaching. The simplest part of which is that we are setting up, we are the group of 42 different organizations like ourselves in Mount Vernon and the museum in Philadelphia and so forth. And we are setting up a website so that if a teacher has, we are told 7 minutes on average to teach the revolution these days, they can very quickly find solid research on a given topic. And so that's that's who we are and what we're doing, what we're all about. Fred Graham was as Dr. Nolan mentioned, Fred Graham was past president of both Massachusetts and the General Society in Washington. And he very firmly believed that education was an important part of our program, which we only in the last 10 years have really given enough impetus to. So when he left us, he very generously left a gift to the Massachusetts Society, and so that we decided this was a good way to do it. I should just mention before I really pat Sam on the back, to my left is General Henry Knox. General Knox was a bookseller in Boston. He read all kinds of information on artillery and the use of warfare and so forth. He became a very valuable part of the revolution. He orchestrated the transfer of cannon from Fort Ticonderoga in New York State here to Boston in the middle of the winter of 1776. And one morning, the British woke up and found all these guns arrayed on Dorchester Heights. And they said, I don't think this is tenable of us to stay here. Let's get our ships out of their range and get out of here. General Knox then became the artillery chief for the Army and was the founding member of the founding impetus, I would say, for the Society of the Cincinnati. And was the first president of the Massachusetts Society. I'm kidding you a little bit about the guys from Ohio. Shortly after the Revolution, some members of the Society of the Cincinnati formed what they call the Ohio Company. They lobbied the Continental Congress to pass what's called the Northwest Ordinance, which was setting up government for the states east of the Mississippi, but from sort of Minnesota east to Ohio, and their first sort of reaching out was to Ohio. And when they had, Marietta was the first town they founded, but they, when they were ready for a big city on an important river, they named the city after the Society of the Cincinnati, and that's where that name came from. Sam, you've done a lot in giving your kids a sense of how important the revolution is, and with a lot of creativity. And we're very pleased to present you this certificate, which you can frame somewhere and maybe in your classroom. You will find in the back of that frame that there is an envelope with a check for $1,000, which is the award for the Graham Award. And we also want you to have a copy of Jack Warren's Freedom Book, which I think you will find has all kinds of, high level scholarship, but reads like a novel. And I commend any of the rest of you who want to catch up on the revolutionary history to take a look at Freedom. So
thank you very much.
I believe General Knox would like to speak.
Very, very shortly, I just wanted to say that when I created the Fred Graham Award, and the inspiration for the structure of the Fred Graham Award was my experience with Sam McGraw bringing his classes to the Shirley Eustace House, of which I was then the president, and the way his children interacted, questioned, thought about, and absorbed history was in many, many ways the inspiration of this award. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, General Knox.
Doing fantastic. How about you? I still remember some of the things we did in your class.
Bye. Congrats.
thank you all again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Nope.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda for this evening. Is there anything that a member would like to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion? Tamika?
So I'd like to pull the custodians MOU just out of the consent agenda so that we can discuss and vote separately.
Okay. We will remove the custodians MOA, and that leaves the meeting minutes from our July 9th and April 9th and April 24th meeting.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from those two meetings.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Rajiv?
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2, yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Absent.
Absent. Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8?
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 8-0 with 1 absent. We'll move to discuss the memorandum of agreement between the Newton Public Schools and the Custodian Association. So Tamika, did you have a particular comment, question, or you want to?
It's just as a matter of procedure, I believe it should be standalone item on the agenda.
Fair enough. Everyone has had an opportunity to review the MOA. In many respects, it mirrors a lot of the same provisions in the NTA contract. Is there questions or comments that members have? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the MOA between the Custodians Association and the Newton School Committee? Barry?
Actually, go ahead.
Tamika, go ahead.
No. If you've got the language, you're good.
I don't actually have it. I just realized as I did.
Then
that,
I'll
do
take it. Sure.
Tamika, is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the 1-year MOA from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, and the 3-year MOA from July 1st, 2024 through the June 30th, 2027 between the Newton's Public Schools, Custodians Association, and the Newton School Committee.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second it.
Barry, okay. Moved by Tamika, seconded by Barry. Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on that motion. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6 is absent. Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8?
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller?
Yes.
Okay. That is approved 8-0 with 1 absent. And I believe that concludes all of our collective bargaining agreements now. Thankfully.
Rest of the consent.
And that, I'm sorry?
The rest of the consent, did you do that while I
Yes.
stepped out? Okay.
Yeah, we already
Got it.
approved the meeting minutes.
Great.
So we'll move to the discussion items for tonight, of which I expect we have 2 that are probably going to take a little bit of time. So I ask that we be as efficient as possible in these discussions. And the first one, I believe Dr. Nolan is going to.
Yes, it is my pleasure to honor our school committee student reps this evening, 2 of whom are here. Ms. Mazzola, I don't think anyone else is here, correct? Just these 2?
Grace is online.
Okay, so everyone's here. We'll start with Matthew Zhang. Good evening. It's nice to see you. Just wanted to briefly recognize that Matthew, of course, represents our high-achieving students who has done everything he can to take advantage of his high school time at Newton South. He's a humble and engaging student. He credits the influence of his grandparents in China for fostering his love of learning and appreciation of family and friends. He describes himself as an introvert, but has found a true passion and camaraderie as member of the Newton South debate team, achieving at high levels in the regional, state, and national tournaments. His interest in civic engagement, improving systems, has led to the leadership position in South's Student Senate and being elected as South Student Representative to the Newton School Committee, both valued and esteemed roles for a high school student. He's also part of South's Green Student Movement, Key Club, and UNICEF chapters. So thank you, Matthew, for your service to the school committee. Okay, next, we'll go online for Grace. I don't know if we're going to be able to see her on there. Yes, we are. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
Grace is a Newton North High School student who is in the realm of extracurricular activities, been a leadership in the student faculty administration, displaying strong leadership skills and a deep commitment to enhancing the school experience for her peers. She's taken on the role of the school committee rep for the class of 2024, demonstrating her dedication to her fellow students. She's also involved in just about every sport, or has been, including unified track and basketball, indoor track, previous involvement in field hockey, Nordic skiing, volleyball, and softball. Her athletic participation shows her dedication, teamwork, and versatility. In addition, she has volunteered as an umpire for Newton Girls Softball, babysitting, works as a hostess at the Bluebird, and she has demonstrated a strong sense of responsibility by working as a lifeguard during the summers and school breaks. She's a volunteer as an LIT at her camp, and her current role as junior counselor reflects her giving back to the community that she loved. She's also involved in organizations like Next Gen Voices, One Night Out, Planned Parenthood, Tiger UNICEF, Global Buddies. And lastly, she is a part of the nonprofit organization Working Towards Change, where she participates in volunteer work and events. This is impressive involvement and makes her a wonderful school committee choice, given the breadth of her involvement. And so we'll have to meet up at North soon, and I'll give you your award, Grace.
Thank you
for your participation. And lastly, in person, we have Max Harthorn, who is also a student at South. And someone sent me a sophomore speech you wrote in 2023, which was lovely to read. It was very funny, and it's way too long and it's hard to summarize for this moment, but I just thought I would tell you that I was very moved by it. Certainly, I have met Max at many events at his school. He is also one of 13 2024 National Merit Scholars. He is also someone I've met through the biking and sustainability work at his school, where he has helped to create more action and activity on social and climate issues for the school. He takes rigorous classes, is connected to a community of learners, and he mentions that it's a treat to do his AP comparative government work. So that pretty much sums up maybe why you like school committee, right? He puts his all into everything, and we are so pleased that you have been able to lend your voice to this process this year. So thank you, Max. Okay.
Okay. And I think on behalf of the school committee, I would like to say thank you to our 3 reps, and best of luck next year. Okay, we'll move on to superintendent evaluation. Dr. Nolan.
So I'm just going to be very short and sweet here. I've created a memo for you that has all the links that you need to evaluate your superintendent in one place, including the forms that the Department of Education requires you to fill out, the district goals that we have set color-coded for whether they've been completed or not. So green is a go, it's been completed. Yellow is in partial completion, and red is it was not achieved this year. Your job relative to the Department of Education rubric is to decide if the artifacts that I have submitted for my personal goals and those for the district goals meet the proficiency standard that is outlined in that memo. So I'm happy to meet with any individual member who needs assistance. And I do know that the chair and vice chair have a plan for how they will meet with the committee, interact, and support you.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Yeah, so as I think most people are aware, there is a sort of very defined process here by DESE. We obviously will follow that, and it's up to us if we choose to supplement that with any other feedback for Dr. Nolan's process. Emily and I should be putting our heads together in the very near future to come up with the logistics of how we're going to go through filling out the form, collecting all the input from the members, and ultimately providing that feedback formally and informally. Any questions? Yes, Tamika.
Thanks, Chris. It's not a question, but it does touch on the last thing you said, which was you and Emily as school committee leadership will jointly together amalgamate the field feedback and consolidate that into one report that's submitted. Just wanted to make sure that correction was noted, because it's not the same here. So I know that was an oversight on your part, but.
Okay, I
I'm
did
glad-
not know that there would be a duo doing
Okay.
that work, so I'm happy to revise the memo to
Thank you,
that
ver-
effect.
thank you, appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamika, for pointing that out. Any other questions? Yes, Rajiv.
Just a confirmation, I think all of our individual submissions to you and Emily are also considered part of the public record, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Yes, so as you're making those submissions, note that they are part of the public record.
No emojis. Got it.
I wasn't looking at you at all.
Aren't I lucky that all of my evaluation is public? Just for the public's knowledge, it's all out there.
Any other questions or clarifications? All right, great. We will move on to discuss phones. And with us this evening, we have two of our esteemed principals, Jackie Mann from Day and Henry Turner from Newton North, and as well Toby Romer, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary.
Great. Terrific to be here tonight. I'm Toby Romer, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Ed. I'm just playing host to the stars of the show tonight, Henry and Jackie, who are going to be talking about the pilots that we've done in their school this year around cell phone use. And so just to give a little bit of context, I'll share the first couple of slides and then turn it over to them. Currently we do have clear expectations for managing cell phones and other electronic devices in our schools at middle and high school, specifically the levels we'll be talking about tonight. At the middle school level, cell phones are expected to be off and away, and middle school educators respond to issues with student cell phones throughout the day, and they can ask for administrator assistance as well. We often will take phones away from students that are not meeting that expectations repeatedly, and they can get those devices back at the end of the day, or in more serious situations, we have conferences with parents and extended consequences for that. At the high school level, phones are expected to be away during class time. There's some situations where teachers will permit them based on academic usage of the phones. And then we have individual teachers who have also been doing some of their own pilots and created their own classroom-based rules that are designed to limit the impact of cell phones in a negative way, but still allow them to be used constructively. And it is important to note for this conversation, there are a number of, I think, useful classroom applications, school applications of these mobile devices, which is part of the complexity of the situation. So it's helpful to understand that as well. Thinking about just what the challenge is that we're dealing with before we deal into it. I don't need to tell, I think, most of the folks in the room what these challenges are. This slide summarizes it nicely. I think one of our public commenters earlier had a different estimate of the number of buzzes a day that students or all of us are getting on our phones, even when we're not holding them or looking at them. That leads to attention fragmentation, the term coined in the book, The Anxious Generation. But we are seeing it at both the middle and high school level, that pull of the phone leading to, if not distraction in the classroom, students stepping out of class, using their phone in the bathroom, connecting with others, or other different levels of distractibility. We also see, as we're working on enforcing the rules that we currently have, it creates numerous negative interactions between students and educators throughout the day, which is also very challenging. And obviously, we're all concerned about the larger impact of these electronic devices, which have only in the last 10 years become so ubiquitous on the overall development and well-being of our adolescents. So that's the larger context here. I think the bigger context as well is simply understanding this is not a question of should we or shouldn't we, but rather a question of how do we, as a community and then as schools, work to manage these devices in a way that is doable and clear and practical. I think there's a lot of sort of oversimplification of the issues, and hopefully the pilots that we've done and some of the follow-up discussion will help to make that part a little bit clearer for everyone. So the two pilots that Henry and Jackie are going to talk about were funded by a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The title of the grant, approaches to address student cell phone use. So thanks very much to the work of Amy Mistro here on the Business Finance and Planning team. We're able to get this grant just this end of last school year, about a year ago, into the summer, and able to plan for these 2 pilots. We had 2 different pilots at each level, using what we thought were developmentally appropriate interventions for middle school and then for high school, also based on the logistics of how our schools work. So I'm going to turn it over to first Jackie Mann, principal of Day Middle School, to talk about the pilot of the Yonder pouches at Day. And I'll let you click through on there.
Thank you, everyone. I don't know if I can say much more than the public comment really made all of my points. April did steal my thunder, April. I did not prompt them to come here. I think I was moved by the commentary. I think it's what we felt anecdotally as a faculty at Day. And I want to give thanks to Amy Mistro again, our wonderful director of business, because she is a miracle worker when it comes to finding grants that support innovative practices. We seem to be poised to take this pilot on at Day Middle School. It's something we'd been talking about my 7th year at Day, pretty much all of the time at Day, about the negative interactions around cell phones. And it was really impacting teachers' ability to connect with students. It was impacting teaching and learning. And we had the data to back that up. I think at the time when Amy sent out a note in the middle of July, thank goodness I wasn't on vacation. And she said it was first come, first serve. And we had all the information that we needed to move forward. And with Toby's permission, we did that at Day. So we were ready because we had logged all of the negative interactions the year before. We had implemented a system with very significant tracking of cell phones to sort of support what we knew, which is it interfered with teaching and learning, but also more importantly, children's social emotional well-being. So along those lines, I can share, and you'll see it later on in the presentation, there were close to 400 negative interactions from November of 2022 through May of 2023. And that was really enough for us. And so when we had this opportunity, I had heard about Yonder, read a few articles of pilots in other schools, and we had the opportunity. The timeline, as you had in our presentation, really, we received the grant in August, and then we did a lot of work. Like with any program that you roll out, there's a lot of fear of the unknown. We got the grant over the summer, and imagine the challenges. So suddenly people came back, our staff didn't know the program existed, our families didn't, and our students. So we used a lot of what we know how to do at Day Middle School, which is partner with all of our stakeholders. We invited parents in for conversations and for meetings. The staff, it was like a 2-minute meeting. They were like, yes, we're all on board, as you'll see from the affidavits. That didn't take very long, but the Yonder folks did send someone today to talk about the program, to give examples of how it worked in other places. And then the really important part are our students. We use what we know works well with middle school students, and that sort of interactive modeling about what this would look like. We address their concerns. They're not all addressed. One of the things that I will lift up here that are not on the slides is student voices, because they want their cell phones. I mean, I'm just going to name that. As we went through and we did all the stakeholder meetings and we talked about protocols, the Yonder company really did support us in doing that. They had a wealth of experience from rolling this out. I think they worked with every middle school in Providence successfully. And so they sent staff to work with us and talked about our protocols. They were impressed with what we were doing already in terms of our policies. So it was an easy alignment for us. We launched the program then in November. As part of it, I'd really like to just talk about what it looks like. I brought show and tell because I'm a middle school educator. There's a little bag I'll show you, but there's also some pictures that I want to show you. So essentially, we don't have a lot of administrators on duty in the morning. There's just the 3 of us. And so I'm at the front door, Mr. Haley's on the back door, and Dr. Romeo's in the cafeteria supervising a lot of children. But we greet each child at the door. We supervise them as they, you know what, I'm going to do interactive modeling for all of you, if that's okay for a moment. I brought with me my magnets and handheld ones, and this one gets attached to the wall. So the students would come in. Thank you, Mr. Romer. Actually, I have my own. It's not off and away yet. The students would come in the morning and they'd have their cell phones out. Some of them have already started to put them away. That was a win. They come in, they put their phones in their pouches. We watch them do it. We actually want them to turn their phone off first, which I haven't done for you because the phones do go off in the middle of class. They put them in the pouch. There's a little pin here. And there's a click. And what we say is at Day Middle School, you click before you go in the door. And with that click, their phone is secure. They really have tried. There was a lot of research done by middle school students in the first month, a lot of Googling, a lot of where do I buy these magnets on Amazon? And there's a patent, I believe, that goes along with it. True story. So as part of this, what I want to say was really important. I'm making it seem like very basic, and it's not. There was a lot of work that went into talking to families about their needs, because it was mentioned by one of the parents. Parents have the need to be in touch with their students, right? And so we gave parents an opportunity to say, number one, we're not interested in doing cell phones with our child. We want to exempt them. We don't want interactions when they walk through the door around cell phones. So we created an exemption list. If you say to me that your child doesn't have a cell phone, I believe you, and we're not checking for it. So that was the exemption list. The second were we use of Velcro pouches. I mean, there are students for medical needs and also for social emotional needs that need to have access to their phones. Also, the staff were given Velcro pouches so they have access to it. And the third was we just kind of, as part of the rollout, we did periodic check-ins with students to see how they were doing with it. So that was all part of it. It wasn't very basic, and we still do it every single day as the students come through the door. Some pictures of what it looks like. That's the front door at Day Middle School. These magnets kind of affixed to the wall. They come in and they apply them. The easiest part is the end of the day. In the morning is what I showed you already. At the end of the day, they take their little magnets. They love to do this. And the biggest worry from parents when we rolled it out was, what if my child forgets to unlock it? Well, silly us, children never forget to have access to their cell phones. So they put it against the magnet. They press the little button. Whoop, now it's not going to work for me, right? And it pops open. There we go. And then they have access to their phone at the end of the day. So that's kind of how the process works. More pictures of us. We came up with this. Phones have always been away at Day Middle School, but now we've secured them. So we said, say goodbye to your phones and lock it up for the day. Students did posters for us. We really tried to shift the culture around cell phones at Day Middle School. We're going to show you a little video. This is Dr. Romeo, our assistant principal, greeting a student, so you can kind of see it in action. This is Adriel. He agreed to be on film for this. Coming in our back entrance. Dr. Romeo opened the pouch for him because sometimes when you put the pouches overnight in your backpack, they get locked. So it had to be opened up. He put it in, she checked it. Look at how she's smiling at him in the morning. There was a lot of concern about negative interactions. Oops, sorry, Toby. Thank you. A lot of negative interactions, like thinking about alignment with our school values. Like, are we accosting children as they walk through the doors? Is it like going to airport security? And the truth is, I have an opportunity to greet students in the morning, check in with them, see how they're doing. The students are really used to the routines by now. So I wanted you to see that so you can see the what of it. And talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done with parents. So while the phones are secured during the day, we've also done some outreach with parents either through the district or through Day Middle School and brought some education around social media and smartphones as part of this. There has been a Newton Public Schools smartphone working group dating back to 2017, my first year at Day. There's been community-wide screening of screenagers. Really alarming. If you haven't seen it, take an opportunity to see it. And the Day School Council has been a focus for quite a while. So we've done some parent forums. And then this past, I think it was 2 years ago, we brought Dr. Catherine Perlman, who wrote the book First Phone. So for parents that are thinking and considering a decision about giving their child this very serious device, it's a really good book. And we've had discussion groups around it. Just to move on and talk about some of the parent concerns. Parents are a little worried, and this was already mentioned during public comment, of being able to get a hold of their children during the day. We had children who were not feeling well and wanted to reach out directly to their parents. Our response to parents has been that we can partner with parents about whether they should go home, whether they need urgent care. And so that was something that we really wanted to funnel through our main office. We addressed the issue in public comment about what happens in an emergency. We checked in with first responders, and they let us know that we really don't want 800 children on their cell phones in the middle of a lockdown situation. It's not safe. And I know that's hard as a parent. I'm a parent myself, and I text my children in the basement sometimes, right? And I think what happens is we realize that some of that interaction takes away the human piece of it. What we want children to do in an emergency is really rely on the adults taking care of them. The last way we really address some parent concerns is by use of the Velcro pouches that I mentioned previously. With all that in mind, we'll look to some of the feedback that we received around positive outcomes. We talked a little bit about the decrease in negative interactions. I think that's the most powerful. You'll see some affidavits from the day faculty talking about, we can talk about teaching and learning. I can ask you how your day is without telling you to take those earbuds out of your ear. And the teachers really have supported the ongoing continuation of this program. We're going to talk a little bit about the shoe tree as an option that Henry's going to talk about as their pilot. We've piloted that at Day Middle School. The reason why those classroom measures don't work at Day Middle School and other middle schools is because when kids get their phone, then they meet up in the bathroom. They shoot each other a text, they're gathering, and wonderful things don't always happen when that happens in a middle school setting. Really nice children really don't have control of their impulses with a phone in front of them. And sometimes positive things don't take place. So we've seen, as a result of this program, decrease in incidents of vandalism in bathrooms. We've seen decrease of incidents of bullying through social media. And we also see that kids they're not out of the classroom as much as they used to be. So when they sign out, they really are just going to the bathroom and then they're coming back. We have had an overwhelmingly positive response from the day faculty. I've captured a bunch of quotes. You can feel free to click in on the link on your own, but I think what the day faculty, if they were here with me, would say is this is a game changer for them. Please don't let them go back to the way it was before. They see children engaging in conversation on field trips, talking to each other in the morning. It used to be when you came into the day cafeteria, kids would have their face buried and not talking to each other. They're playing cards, they're playing chess. It was really important for us today when we took away something, which was this sort of connection to their phone. We replaced it with good old-fashioned play. So kids at Day Middle School now go outdoors 3 times in a 6-day cycle. And I think that part is really important. We added that to the schedule. Some parent feedback. I'm grateful to the day school council. We were sending out a survey anyway about how we communicate with regards to student progress. And they let me add on a few Yonder questions at the end. So you have with you some of the results. It's not 100% parents on board. This is a majority of the parents. And I've already shared with you some of the concerns. I think there were a lot of parents that wanted to hear how the teachers felt. So at the end of the school year, I'll be doing sort of a circle back to families and say, this is what the faculty are feeling about day. It's a game changer. We want to engage in this program going forward. A lot of parents are concerned, does a program like this align with our school values? We're stopping kids at the door. We're asking them for their cell phones. And what the teachers would say if they were all here with me is that we're stopping the negative interactions that are taking place day to day in the classroom by taking, a few minutes in the morning to make sure that their phones are secured. I've given you some sample feedback from teachers here. I think some of the things that stand out, I'm going to start with the parent feedback. And I think someone mentioned this earlier. There used to be the wait till 8 movement. I don't know if anyone remembers that, where parents were wondering, should they wait till 8th grade till their child gets a cell phone? I've heard from many 6th grade parents saying there's a lot of peer pressure to go out and get their child a phone. This takes it off that plate. No one has access to their phone. So if you're a family that really wants to wait to put this really significant device in your child's hands, you don't feel the pressure of your child's classmates. Their experiences are different since coming to Day Middle School as 6th graders. From a teacher perspective, bless you. From a teacher perspective, I mean, all of this I've mentioned already. Less meeting up in bathrooms, more time in class, more engagement, more positive interactions with staff and with students. So I know I seem like a little bit Pollyanna-ish about this program, but I haven't really seen major downsides. There's glitches that come up. We're sorting through, do kids take their cell phones on field trips, for example? Our students, our 8th graders went to the Edward Kennedy Institute and they locked up their cell phones and they engaged in debate. They talked to each other. They laughed on the bus. The 8th grade teacher said it was a wonderful experience. On the other side, there are students that will be on field trips that are a little bit less supervised. Sometimes at the end of the year, we'll do an opportunity for students to sort of wander around in groups. And a field trip like that, like Kimball Farm, for example, we probably will let them have cell phones because it's a safety measure. So we're finding our way. We're taking good advice from the Yonder program. But I think overall, we're hoping, and I'm speaking on behalf of the day faculty and many, many parents, that we'll be able to continue this program. And I'm going to turn it over to Henry, talk about the pilot. Yep, there we go.
Excuse me. So we're in a different place than Day, and tackling this in a different way than Day. But I would say that our challenges remain the same in terms of student misuse of cell phones, distraction in classrooms, and the online bullying and harassment that we've seen. And so from our standpoint, this is not a new program. It's just that we were able to expand it through this grant. So since I've been at North, we've been exploring different ways in which we can have places for students to put their cell phones in their classrooms. And I'd say this was not a new issue when I arrived at North in 2016. In fact, I remember when there were flip phones and students could actually feel the buttons of the numbers that they were in their pockets texting their friends way back in the 08, 07 years. So this is an old challenge, but I think the research is clear, and the problem continues to increase, and the social media component is also increased. And so we have since 2016 have had, whether they've been created by our carpentry program, boxes for students to put their cell phones. 2017-18, we had a pilot that a teacher received a grant through our PTSO with Yonder. And then we were able to get shoe trees that were actually for shoes in 2017-18 off Amazon, and that started to explode. And then around 2020, our PTSO was willing to provide shoe trees for anyone that was who wanted them in the classroom. So at that point, we had well over 50% of our classrooms with them. And so this grant was able to get every classroom to have them. And so our goal and our challenge right now is to have 100% participation among our staff with the shoe trees. And it's not at 100% for a variety of reasons. I think based on the developmental pace of our students, part of our classroom management style is to put a lot of responsibility on students for decision-making, and understanding that this is not just about student decision-making, but actually about student addiction is an important shift for us to understand as high school educators. So we do have good participation among teachers using them, but our goal is to get 100% participation. And what we know is that if teachers are using them, then acts of student distraction in the classroom is reduced. And so one dean shared, Michelle Staus shared with me, she was, as you know, at North, our deans are responsible for one grade every year. And so it's hard to sort of compare the 4 different houses because there are 4 different age groups, but Michelle was able to track from 9th grade last year, 10th grade this year. She had 24 incidents of teachers handing over cell phones to her after students were misusing them. She had 9 this year. So clearly it is working, but her point to me was if a teacher is using it, then there's 0 incidents. If a teacher is not using it, then there are incidents. So that's our goal. And this year we've set the expectation that everyone should be using them. Next year, it's going to be even more clear at the beginning of the year that everyone should be using these shoe trees. I would say that this is the easy step for us, which is to, and it is a challenge in terms of getting 300 teachers to all do the same thing. But this is the easy step. The step outside the classroom is more complicated. So we're an open campus school. So Yonder doesn't seem like it's a sustainable practice for us, where students are coming and going when they don't have class. And we don't have the space to have students in our building all the time. And also the extracurricular component of our high schools. And I know that this is true at Newton South, where they have using the cell phone holders as well, is that it is possible that we can have students at school 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And if there's just not a way for them to have their cell phone, even though there are adults that are there are fewer adults that are there. And it just feels like a challenge to restrict them outside of this classroom for those particular reasons. So I do want to explore the challenges with you, but I do want to also share with you that we've done a lot of work in terms of parent education as well as student education. We have a stipend, Rob Greenfield, who is our digital literacy coordinator for our school. And he, I would say, is one of the foremost thinkers in our district on distraction as well as social media use among students. He's done presentations for all of our students every single year. He's done presentations for parents, both at North and at South. I believe he's gone to middle schools to speak to parents. And so he's been a real, and he teaches a class for our seniors on the digital world. So we're doing a lot of work in terms of digital literacy, social media understanding, critical thinking around sources in that area. Our PE health and wellness teachers are doing a lot on cell phone distraction and the data on there. So I do think that we're doing a concerted effort in terms of the education for our students. This has been a hot topic among parents since I've been at North. Previously, Superintendent Fleischman had a presentation, community-wide presentation where experts came to speak on cell phones. We've had our PTSO have several programs for parents every year that are somewhat connected to cell phone use. So I do think that the parent education piece is also pretty well established as well. This is what the cell phone holders look like. They're, for the most part, in around the doors of the classrooms where students can come in. They can put their phone in. They are supposed to be off, and students are not supposed to be taking them out of the cell phone holder when they go to the bathroom or get a glass of water. They're supposed to be off. They're supposed to be away the entire time. I will say one of the challenges at a high school, particularly as we're thinking about creative assessments and a variety of different assessments, is that teachers are asking students to use video, for example, for a lot of projects. And so I just was taking pictures of cell phone pockets and saw some students who were doing a video on returning your book at the library was the purpose of the project, but they were using a cell phone to record. And so I do think that that is a challenge in terms of students needing them for academic reasons. But then the more that we give students permission to use them in that kind of way, the more that they feel the need to use them, and the harder it is to make sure that they stay in the pockets. And so, do you want to continue? Yeah, I would just say that for us, the goal is 100% use of the pockets next year. And we do have a survey that is going out to staff. It's not going to be all the same questions that Jackie is using, but we're working with Rob to think about, what are ways that we can also get teacher feedback on this before the end of the school year. So I'm happy to share that with Superintendent Nolan to share with you once we have that data.
Yeah, just a few final thoughts on our next steps, and then happy to open up for questions and discussion. And from our student reps here as well, who are resident experts.
Mr. Romer, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Just because we had a member submit some questions about, so you're coming with a family survey, Dr. Turner, and any student feedback or your student advisory?
So that's part of our survey as well as a survey of students.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the next step here more generally speaks to some of that question as well, of like there's more research to do here to evaluate what we've done so far, both the Yonder program and the pockets, the shoe trees at the high school level, and also looking at funding and financing for the Yonder program, which is a for-profit company that has a specific model. The cost is significant given our overall budget, and working to figure out how we can continue to do that, and whether continue or expand the model that Day has been using this year, specifically for Yonder, where there's that additional cost. Thinking more generally about what have we learned in terms of best practices from these two pilots in the classroom holder model in particular, but both of them, and building off of that to see what we can do that would be more sustainable. No, that's all right. And then, is there a third way? Are there other options here that we haven't thought of? Again, back to the big picture from the beginning. It's not about should we or shouldn't we. It's about how do we do this in a way that's efficient and sustainable and effective. And so thinking about what are other options that we may not have considered. Are there some do-it-yourself ways to create lockboxes and potentially learn from other recipients of the DESI grant around addressing cell phone use? And I think we have to think really clearly here about like, what are the goals of the program? And so I suggest 3 here in the final bullets. We could think about, how do we create a cell phone or distraction-free environment within classrooms where learning is taking place? That's obviously the core of what we do. We can think more generally about how do we create a cell phone-free environment during the school day for 6 or 7 hours or more, if that's a larger goal, and think about how that impacts areas outside of the classroom, how it impacts common areas, break times, et cetera, if that's a goal that we share. And I think important to define the we here as well is not just the Newton Public Schools, but the larger community of Newton, including parents, including other folks invested in the health and well-being of our students. And then, is there a third goal of just working collectively and collaboratively to address, our larger societal concerns about the well-being of our young people and how these devices are impacting them? That's not obviously a goal that the schools can accomplish independently. But those are 3 different tiers, and think about the different levels of resource and collaboration necessary to address each one of those. So even adjusting the 2 models here, see an example of something that's working to address the whole school day experience as opposed to each classroom and each learning environment individually. So an important context for the ongoing conversation. So I'll stop there and we can open up to questions and comments.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that information. I'd like to proceed this way with, and I'm glad you closed with that, Toby, because that's kind of exactly the way I wanted to ask the committee how we want to proceed about this. There's what can we do within the 4 walls of our school buildings, and that is something very different than this bigger community issue. And if for anyone who's read the Anxious Generation, I mean, you really get that. I mean, the severity of the problem, which I think we all knew, but to see it in charts is a little disturbing. The nature of this being, this is beyond the 4 walls of a school building. So what I'd like to do is first, if members have questions specific to these programs, pilots, what's worked, what hasn't, I would love some input from our students perhaps. And then we can maybe sort of ask that bigger question of, what is our role as a committee here? What should we be doing? We don't have a codified policy across this district related to phones. Is that something we should be undertaking as a committee? And, how do we go about that, interacting with our building administrators, with our teachers to figure out something that's going to be effective? I mean, yonder pouches, probably aren't going to be the answer. They're really expensive. We can't scale that. At the same time, I know, and I can confirm, my child at Day does not like the yonder pouch, nor do any of her friends. But I shared this with Jackie when we had our PTO meeting there, and we were talking about this issue. There's I think, meaningful non-compliance rate of kids who are sneaking their way around it and whatever, but we're still seeing the massive decline in these negative interactions because there's been this, it's a marker of this cultural shift of a different level of consequence maybe. I think it can be done without yonder pouches, or with yonder pouches as part of the solution, or I think there's a lot of creative ways to go about this. So first, if we can talk about the pilots programs, questions directly for them, and then I'd like to open it up for a larger discussion. Tamika, and then Amy.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Thank you both, Henry and good Lord, I'm doing it again. Hold on, Jackie. No, it's literally, that's the second time that's happened to me. Anywho, full disclosure, other than my brain amnesia right there, Jackie is my principal. Henry is going to be my kid's incoming principal next year. The kids have not, like Chris's daughter, not loved the implementation of the program. However, it's been phenomenal. So I will say there's a mini pilot happening within the pilot with both mine and Chris's children at Day. And it's just, I love that this is a way to seamlessly, I want to say enforce, but that's not the right word. It's more to help the children implement the policy. And I think of it that way. I'm mea culpa with our superintendent. I said that Day has a policy, that we have a policy, because it's so embedded in my brain that cell phones are off and away at Day. The kids never got that, but as a parent, it was loud and clear. The consequences were well laid out. I'm sure the kids had all of that, but they were still sneaking away in the bathrooms. And I can attest that at least one of my twins during the 6th grade World Cup year was not compliant. And so I think, yes, we need to implement a district-wide policy. That would be wonderful. However, the fact of the matter is it's the clarity of the boots on the ground, the administrators on the ground, and the teachers who are making sure that the kids are following through. And to the extent that we can help you do that more effectively, I think we should. It would behoove us to make sure you've got all the necessary tools.
I just want to relieve you of your worry. So anything that's voted as part of the handbook for a secondary school is policy small p, but we don't have a district-wide policy. So it's a both and.
If I could just say one thing I do think is a ongoing issue is the devices that are not phones. So watches, for example, right, are a big distraction because cell phones can be off, but the phone can still, you can do everything you can do with your phone. AirPods, same thing. So I think that what I have found to be weak in terms of cell phone policies around other districts is that when they're overly specific, they end up getting outdated really, really quickly. And so I think we want to think about that when we think about policy from your perspective. And also practicality in terms of enforcement. So one of our challenges in terms of getting 100% compliance is just like what does enforcement look like? And so I think if it's overly taxing in terms of enforcement, then it becomes less likely that we enforce it, and then it becomes less of a enforceable policy. So I just want to share that kind of lens for you as you think about that.
Yeah, I'll say one thing and then pass it to you. I think a good analogy, like the key is not, again, should we or shouldn't we? What is the rules? We need clearer rules. I think a good analogy is the highway speed limit, right? We have a highway speed limit of 65, but everyone's driving around in cars that can go 90 without even blinking an eye. So people don't go over the speed limit all the time. We have very clear rules. They're posted. It's explicit. There are consequences. It's not because of the moral decay or lack of interest in highway safety by the police that this is happening. But we need a system. We need a system to actually get there. So this is a question. This is thinking about what are the systems we have in place to make sure that learning is not interrupted. And that's really where the rubber hits the road. It's ultimately, I think, not a school committee policy level decision, but we're trying to look at and learn from best practices more than that. If that's helpful, the way to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to go back and address like what's happening at the middle level. Chris, you were mentioning like we don't need Yonder to do it. What really worries me is the level of negative interactions. Like we have done the shoe tree, we've considered the lock boxes in the morning where kids can come into advisory and we can lock them up and they come back to it. I love afternoon advisory, by the way. That's a great idea. However, I'm putting the teachers in a position of negative interactions with students. You were talking about earbuds. The kids are wearing hoods. That's fine with us, but the earbuds are there. And so right during math class, I'm listening to my music. That's why the phones have to be off from the pouches. They're totally could be sitting there facing you right away, not paying any attention. So I think developmentally, middle schoolers need our help, right? Their brain is being seized. It is an addiction. And I think this level of intervention, maybe there's another device aside from the Yonder pouch. And obviously this doesn't belong in the policy realm, right? You'll pass the policy, but we're responsible for implementing and then for supporting our students. After thinking through it, all of the positive impacts are really only with a program with this level of strict implementation, because quite honestly, we've done all of the policy consequences. That's why Yonder and our school really was a nice fit for each other, because we'd been doing all the work and it still wasn't happening. Kids were off and away. They were in their pockets and their phone was buzzing. So really good kids. And any chance they had a moment in the middle of math or English class, they'd be going like this. And sometimes it was their parents texting them. right? So not doing anything bad, but it's distracting them. So I really, I'd love to hear about the other DESE pilots. I am worried about the other alternatives that we'd look at. I'd rather not spend money on something that I know it's not going to work at middle school. By the way, the earpods, I didn't mention that the watches, everything goes in the pouch as well at the middle school.
Thank you. Amy?
I think you might have answered my question for Jackie, which was specifically about the decision to have administrators kind of steer implementation at the door as opposed to educators in classrooms, like at advisory. Is that why?
Exactly right. There? Yeah. So let's, for example, one of the things we really did look at already and started pricing out were these lock boxes you were describing. Get them on Amazon and they're permanent purchase, right? So that's what's nice. They get a little key. The kids come back into advisory to get their phones, but in the morning when they walk through the door, I say hello to them. They go into their advisory teacher. Can I have your phone? Let's put it in the box. I don't have it today. And you know, these are really good kids. They're not trying to bake a role. They're addicted to their phones. And so, yep, I think you do. I saw you have it yesterday. Do I have to call home? Now your day, instead of saying, how's your day? How you doing? Let's get organized for the day. Starts with a negative interaction about a cell phone.
Yep, that makes sense. Henry, I wrote down a comment or a phrasing from public comment about internet-enabled devices as opposed to cell phones. I think that's language we should all probably start adopting because it's way more expansive. So I wanted to lift up your point. The second public speaker talked about the skill of managing boredom and how cell phones provide an escape from boredom. I think they also provide an escape from challenge and discomfort. And that's the scariest part about accessing a cell phone during class is that like we've lost that moment of productive struggle where just by virtue of leaving the room, I no longer have to engage. And so I wondered in the hallway after class, do you see just like a bunch of heads down? Because like, or is there a sort of after effect of positivity where by virtue of being disconnected, there isn't that compulsion to reconnect? And I guess I have the same question for you all too, but that's my high school question.
I would be curious what your thoughts are. I in terms of the grand scheme of problems at our schools, cell phones in the hallways is not top of our list. Certainly there's a lot of other behavioral issues, but I don't see students popping up their phone right when they get out of class. Doesn't mean that doesn't happen. Doesn't mean that there aren't students on Main Street who are just, sitting, a group of students sitting all looking at their phones and not talking to each other. Like that certainly happens. But, and I'll get comments from people who, are not used to high school students who are walking through the building going to NCE or something, and they may comment on that, but that is not a regular sighting in our school. So I do think that the classroom piece has been the biggest challenge. The hallway piece is not as big of a challenge. I think kids are definitely talking to each other. When I shadowed a student, what I found is that the quest to see your friends is because you don't get to see your friends a whole lot during the day who are not in your classes. That's the biggest driver. And so they're going to have that human connection, which is really what we want. But I don't see as much of the challenge of students just looking at their phones. That certainly happens. A number of kids have bumped into me not paying attention, but it's not as widespread as one would maybe think. Is that fair?
Yeah. So we were just talking on this side. I have a lot of different things that I could say. I think it's really difficult. Honestly, like I really am glad that I'm not in your position trying to decide on this because I'm trying to think of every single possible solution that every one of my teachers has tried to do. Now I'm at South, so we don't kind of have that system, but two of my teachers do use the phone in the pocket system, and just kind of none of them are super successful. I don't know. So for the two classes that have the pouches, I think it's really tough to put the teacher in that enforcer and that disciplined role. And I think that, and you do get a lot of, I've seen a lot of people like sneak the phone when the teacher isn't looking and you go out in the hallway, or you have it on your laptop. Like there's a lot of different things that kids will do. And it is kind of like widespread, like kind of everybody, it's not even just like individual people that really want their phones, just kind of everybody is like I really want to text my friend about like when we're going to have lunch or where we're going to do this, whatever. I need to figure out if he's going to bring his car over so that we can go to Chipotle for whatever, the break, whatever it is. So and I think the teachers that did try to do it, I feel like they get, we're both seniors at the end of the year, senior year. So, I've been in this teacher's class for 2 years. He's been trying to do it. And some of the kids I've been in their class for 2 years. So we've been doing this for a long time. And pretty much every class he has to be like, guys, you guys forgot to put your phones in the pockets. Like none of you put the phone holder is completely empty. Everybody go put their phones in, and he gets the same groans every time. And it's a little bit surprising because like we've been doing this for a while, but it's really tough. But I really get the strength of the Yonder program from that, because the pocket is difficult in those ways. But that is also difficult at high schools, the Yonder, because I can't, especially the high schools, the north and south are so big. If I'm trying to find my friends for lunch, I have to text them. There's no way I'm going to find them just by wandering around. And sometimes, I need my headphones so I can watch a video in the library about biology or whatever it is. So you really do need your phones when you're, or your whatever technology when you're outside of class. So I don't know. I don't have a solution. I just have issues with each of them. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I just want to add on regarding what Mr. Turner touched upon about earlier about other devices beyond cell phones as distractions in this classroom, because obviously we have laptops in high school, everyone has one, and from my personal experience in classes, most of the distraction doesn't come from cell phones, it comes from the laptops, because it's the teacher thinks they're doing work, but then majority of the time, a lot of times, people are just playing games and texting people on their laptops. And I think that's in my classes is even the bigger distraction as opposed to cell phones. And I think if the goal is to reduce distractions, the cell phone is the first step, but then I think reducing the use, the misuse of laptops in the classroom would be the second step.
And I would say that as you remember, is that we don't have school issued devices for juniors and seniors. So I think what you're referring to is your own personal device. So if you have Mac, for example, you're going to get all of those alerts on your laptop. So that's going to be different than for the Chromebooks. I'd also say spring semester seniors, compliance with cell phones is probably going to be a lot more difficult than fall ninth graders, right? So I think that's certainly something you're hearing too, but it's certainly a challenge.
And one other thing, one of the teachers that does the phone pockets also has a thing where he never allows laptops in class. So you have to take all notes paper, which I actually think work, and I like using paper. And it's proven that you remember more when you write. So actually, I agree with him the whole time. But then it is tough because there are some kids that are actually they bought one of those, I forget exactly what they're called, but they have it's a laptop, and you get a little pen, and you actually scribble, and you actually, you actually take the notes. So they actually are trying to take the notes, but they're not allowed to. And it's a big frustration for them. So it's tough because there are some kids that are actually trying to use it for notes. Though, and I agree with you that the Chromebook, because on the Chromebook, you can't, there's a lot of apps that you can't access that are distracting. So if everybody in the class was using a Chromebook, it would be a lot easier.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Emily, and then Mayor Fuller.
Thank you again for all the work that you're doing on this. It's so important. My question is actually, and I can't believe I'm actually asking this question, but I think it's a kind of a reality question, possibly that Aisha might be able to answer. Hi. And that is, how frequently do upper elementary school kids have access to a smartphone or a limited smartphone? And I'm thinking about, our presentation at our last meeting with the ITS staff and the note cards that they're, talking to students about good digital behavior and digital citizenship. How many do we need to start this at an earlier age is my question.
Yes. Frequently.
I have an angel.
And is any elementary school actually doing that yet? No.
I'm not sure about that piece, but I visited Horseman fifth graders today, and I had this really exciting presentation, and all they want to talk about was Yonder. Right? They're very, and the fifth grade, they're worried, and why is it just day? I think they want to change their mind about coming to day middle school. So, but really, it consumed the whole conversation with the fifth graders today. So that's anecdotal, but I don't know any.
number of students and getting graduated from younger and third grade, and even younger at times. And so I do think it's a factor. I think what is, and it is a challenge. Elementary school students are generally a little more compliant with adult directions around putting the phones away, but it does become an increasing challenge. It is a distraction, both in terms of the in-school things and responding to the out-of-school events that happen with our
I can tell you that at Ward, smartwatches like Slime are outlawed. And so there's some pretty strict enforcement on that. I'll also say that I have frequent conversations with my elementary principal colleagues in district when they're asking me for advice about how I respond to disciplinary situations that they've never seen before that are happening with their fifth graders.
So just one last comment, which is my youngest is using Yonder in Central, actually, and pretty compliant, and particularly likes the fact that you have to whack it to open it. I mean, that's like the highlight of the day. I was very surprised at how quietly you opened them, because that's not the experience that I've seen. But anyway, so that it's been good there.
Yeah, and a shout out to Central High School. They're actually our district pioneers for the program and have been using it for a number of years very successfully, and an integral part of what they're doing as well with high school students.
Mayor Fuller?
Couple of thoughts. I think the sense of urgency for me and many people in Newton is really, really high on this. Clearly, elementary is going to be the easiest, middle is doable, and God bless you in the high school, which is, I think, the most challenging. I'd encourage the policies for those three areas actually to the draft come from the educators rather than the school committee. I think the folks who are on the front line will be able to draft it, I'm guessing, much more effectively given your firsthand experience with the actual implementation and how hard it is. I'm just wondering, what's the story for next year? Do we have the funding in place for day? Do we, so talk to us about the fall and the other middle schools, and then I can imagine, oddly enough, the high school technique of the shoe trees working, oddly enough, in the elementary school is going to be, maybe oddly, the low cost will be very doable there. But
So I do know there's been quotes for both to continue for day and for the middle school. So I don't know if you want to share that. And
Yeah, I know for day, I know you've been doing the hard work of working with the folks there, but the cost for continuing with day is actually lower because there's a startup cost and getting all the pouches, and there are different models that Jackie can talk about. I know that the price tag for all 4 middle schools is in the range of $50,000. That's not currently budgeted.
and that's a yearly cost.
Yeah. Or
It's
it
not
comes down in subsequent years.
Actually, it'll work like we do the Chromebook exchange. So once it gets rolling, so as our 8th graders leave, they hand them in, and we can repurpose most of them. Some of them won't be usable again. So they've changed their model. They've evolved. I know that they're working with Boston Public Schools. They just did an RFP with Boston Public Schools. And so they've realized that they used to have a lease model, which is just no school system can consider, right? So now when you purchase it, the school district owns it. We repurpose them again, and they factor in many of them that will be destroyed from the banging, apparently. So I think our costs will be not great next year. However, to implement it district-wide, the initial implementation comes with all of these. It comes with Yonder's capacity to come out, and they do site visits with the school. They meet with the admin team. They talk about alignment with your policies and how to sort of support it ongoing.
I would just add one thing to what you said, Mayor Fuller. I actually think the greatest urgency and the greatest challenge is middle school, because developmentally, that's where we're seeing the biggest impacts. Developmentally, that's where our adolescents have the least ability to self-regulate their usage and make good choices with all this newfound communication power and all of the rest of what comes with internet-enabled devices. So I think that's of the three, like that's the challenge. And interestingly, the strategy that may work best in high school as well as elementary is less invasive, right? And requires less direction. And it's going to be at middle school where we need probably more resources and a more significant, intervention to be successful.
I also think we need to support the parents. Like what I've heard from sixth grade parents particularly is that they're in this. They're trying to set limits for their children. It's really hard for them. So if we start with shoe trees in elementary school, maybe we start switching the culture at that level. Right now, I don't think anything short of the stringent policies of like a Yonder are going to do it in middle school. But I think if we support the parents when they make the decision to get their first phone, that's when they really need the intervention. The day staff would not be happy with me if I left this room without saying they can't imagine a situation where we go back to the way it was. That's a strong statement coming from all of our teachers. So I just want to be aware of that as you make some decisions, I know, in front of you.
I would just say quickly, I do think an area where city leaders could be really helpful is helping us with some community commitments with families. Because I know from like a homework perspective that students often will have their cell phone right next to them while they have their homework. The pressure, and I'm speaking as a middle school parent, the pressure to buy your child a phone when they start having some independence after school to walk around. Like if there could be some community commitments of, what are our recommendations for purchasing a cell phone? What are our commitments about no cell phones when students are doing their homework? Like those, I do think are some commitments that if we got most, if not all parents bought into, I do think that we would start to see less bullying at home. That's most of our incidents of online bullying are happening at home, not at school. And social media misuse is also happening at home, not at school. So those kind of commitments, I think, are something that city leaders could be really helpful with.
Barry, and just before you go, Barry, just to clarify, $50,000 would be the cost to implement at all 4 schools next year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm curious if, and this might be a question for Steve actually, but if there's been any research in terms of technology that we can use in order to block the ability for kids to use phones. And I happen to know at Newton South, the cell phone signal is terrible in there. So that's good news then for both high schools. And so if you can control it through the Wi-Fi, which I know is possible, we might at least be able to limit some interactions, especially on the computers, like not texting people during class. So just curious if that is something that anyone has explored.
Stephen, did you want to weigh in on cell phone jammers?
Only briefly. Most of our buildings, you're right, do not get good cell phone access. I think there would be a big safety concern from the adults with cell phones being blocked on the wireless network. We do allow Wi-Fi calling on our network. And we also need it for things like 2-factor authentication. I think there'd be a lot of issues with blocking cell phone access just across the board, and we can't target students versus staff with that. So it would be something we'd have to be really thoughtful about and careful about, especially in relation to things like cybersecurity issues that we're trying to implement 2-factor authentication, and you need your cell phone for that. So, I think there's pros and cons, but.
I forgot about the adults. That's clearly an important thing.
Barry, if you don't mind, can I just add one piece that's
Yeah,
reminding me
sure.
of thinking about the middle school level? It's not for us, not even just the social media. It's like the cameras on their phone as well. Like students are going into the bathroom taking pictures, right? They're taking movies of each other without permission. They're posting videos on TikTok of just, vandalism. Like, I know the posting you need internet access to do that, but the cameras are also, all the things that come with the phone. It's not just that piece of it. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I thought, I'm still going to think about it some more. I think of it as a building block to the entire thing. It wouldn't be that alone. It would be that with, if there is a solution that works.
Go ahead, Dr.
I do just want to remind families that parental controls exist on most cell phones and smartwatches. So I am a recovering middle school parent. I was a middle school principal for 10 years. And parents programming, I did this to my children. I programmed their cameras off, their capacity to make purchases, their internet during the school hours. And I took all the heat but my teachers of my kids did not take the heat. So these come to the community agreements that Dr. Turner was speaking about. And when I say that to parents who are saying like, well, my kid's ordering, DoorDash every day and I don't want them to. And so I say, then don't let them, right? So there are some things that parents can do, limiting those credit card purchases, making sure that cell phones they pay for are limited at certain times of day. That can happen right now, that community members can make those things happen right now. And we won't be able to control apps and purchases and also cameras and all of that unless families join us.
Go ahead, Max.
Just wanted to say very briefly, so I'm a high school student. I have a sister who's a middle school student. And I did an Earth Day recently at South, and we invited a bunch of middle schools over, so I interacted with a lot of them. I think the good news, we're talking about how it's easier to implement, or it's easier to kind of control, that's probably not the right word, the middle schoolers than it is the high schoolers. And I think the good news is that it's probably more drastic and more important at the middle school level than it is at the high school level. And I think that part of it is just like, and this is probably also related to COVID and other things, but just, it's like a different kind of person. Like the sort of, and it's, I think basically, even with the new freshmen that we have now, they're kind of almost like unlike any other freshman class I've ever seen before in certain ways. So I think that really at that like kind of base level early on in elementary and middle school is where it's most important. And then high schoolers, I would like to say, are pretty good at managing their own habits. Now, not perfect, but we have a little bit more self-control, especially because, if we kind of grew up a little bit less with a little bit less technology at least. So I think we might have that more self-control. So I think that speaks to why it is so important at the elementary and middle school level, and maybe not as kind of urgent of a problem at the high school level.
Thanks. Rajiv?
So, Barry, you actually asked part of my question, which was around, can you use infrastructure to block certain apps and so on? And Dr. Nolan actually covered a little bit of it. You can get geofencing apps, which, for instance, would turn off certain things within the radius around Newton North or Day Middle School. Again, I don't think any of them are free. I think they're hard to get around, but they would cost something. And you, again, would need to get community agreement that if I'm getting a smartphone for my child, I will make sure the software is on and it's going to be compliant with what she's doing at, what the rules are at her middle school. So I think there are a number of different approaches. We probably will, I think, based on input from our teachers and our senior staff, figure out a policy, but the way to implement it is going to have to be on multiple levels, right? So I don't think it's necessarily going to be one single thing. So that's one comment. The other is, for better or worse, we have a lot of students, and we have some pricing kind of leverage if we're talking to Yonder or their competitors. I'm assuming they're competitors, and so it may be something we can use to our advantage. If we think like we need to have a policy in middle school and this is how it's going to work and this is how much it's going to cost, we may be able to bring that down, and I would hope we could. It's also concerning hearing about the cell phones at elementary school. I don't know if we don't seem to have a policy, but should there be one? Simply saying, we don't think elementary school is the right time for students to have a cell phone, or certainly to bring one to school. And does that at least potentially delay working through the challenges until middle school? I don't know if that's the answer, but it is concerning if we're talking about 4th and 5th graders kind of having the same challenges, Jackie, that your students have.
I do want to just emphasize, obviously I can't speak about the 4th and 5th graders, but I want to emphasize the security piece to it. So right now, our goal is to get 100% of our students using Parent Square, so that we can connect, so we can communicate. When we have a fire alarm, for example, we need to be able to communicate. We don't have loudspeakers in every location in our school, and so So texting students is actually the easiest way to alert them, to keep them safe. So I do think we need to be mindful. To Barry's question, it is really hard to get, most carriers do not work at both north and south. And there are some safety things that we do need to be mindful of. So the geofencing example, I just think I have some concerns about that, just from a security.
Absolutely understand. And having been in the building at North, I know how difficult it is to get any kind of signal unless you're on the network. Geofencing is one thing that's out there. I know parents who use it to get an automatic update once their child is home from having walked home alone and things like that. So there's no magic bullet. I fully understand that.
Rajiv, I just want to speak to, I've had conversations, several meetings along with Amy Mistra with Yonder. And so their original price point for the Yonder pouches were $30 a pouch. We told them about our rollout, like district-wide, potentially they lowered their price to $22.50. We talked about Newton being a showcase in Premier District where we can, I said, we'll do as many news stories as you want on your behalf because I believe in the work. So like we're still having conversations. I think we landed in a much better place. Is there more negotiation? They told us that was their bottom line, but I just wanted to let you know, like we started in one place and we navigated it down a bit.
Thank you. Anping?
This is a really challenging issue. Technology, sometimes I'm thinking by myself because I'm not a techie person and sometimes I call myself old timer. So I try not to use technology, but I realize, like GPS, you just cannot go out without it, and a lot of other things. But also I realize this is a kind of a cause effect. I mean, for kids who could not leave the cell phone, there's some other things are bothering them. This is just symptoms, and that's why we're talking about the emotional and mental issues. And for those kids, I think probably, in a class, they could not even listen to teacher. They have to check their phone. That sometimes there are deep issues to bother them. But nonetheless, still, that's the problem here. I could use my own example to illustrate this. And, past few months, I got this app, which just, I guess, mostly from China, and could give you some, like a TikTok, but not exact same. Give you all the stories, few seconds, 5 seconds, funny things, music. At night, I thought, okay, let me watch just for 1 minute or 2 minutes before I go to sleep. And then 2 minutes became 5 minutes and 10 minutes. After 1 week, I just delete that app. But that's me. I consider myself very good self-control. But at this age, and how long it took you to develop this self-control for kids, that's a huge problem. So I agree. Probably it's for high school, it's hard. And for practical reasons why it's hard, we have to acknowledge that. But I totally agree with Rajiv and other folks. We have to start elementary school right now. And middle school seems quite successful. Let's have the policies. But also I'm mindful, as Henry said, that, when you have policies, how to implement them. If you cannot implement them well, as Toby said, like high school, it says 60, miles, and then turn out to 80 miles. And then if you cannot enforce the policies, become a kind of joke. And that makes things worse. And next time want to implement, people laugh at you, already failed. So I think we have to be very careful when develop policies. But I totally agree. Let's start elementary school. I think we'll get the most support from parents. Middle school, Jackie, I have a question for you. Looking at the parent feedback, look at the pie chart. I was a little bit surprised. It seems Utah quite strong support, but look at this. Yes, only 50%. And about 19% no. And then almost 30% don't know. What does it mean? I don't know. I want to see that. And you did not provide any written feedback to see what they are thinking. And I'm curious because you need parent support if we have policies. If half parents are not interested in these policies, I don't think our policies will be very effective.
Yeah, thank you, Amping. I think the I don't know is an important category. What we did not do up until now was do sort of a circle back loop. Like this is an opportunity. I hope people are tuning in. What we haven't done for day parents is done this full explanation of the positive outcomes. So a lot of the I don't knows, we've captured some of their statements and some of their responses to the right of that. And they wanted to hear how the teachers felt about it. Because the teachers are in the school day to day. What's happening is their kids will come home and say, as in Tamika's case, if you don't mind lifting up, they'll say, that yonder, what, Mom, what can you do to get rid of that policy at Day Middle School? Because they're middle school kids. And so some of the parents will say, like, this feels right. My child's complaining about it. So can you tell us why it's positive? Why should we support it? We really haven't, I'm at that point now where I need to circle back to the parents. And this was a really wonderful opportunity. Thank you for inviting me today to do it. So I hope many people are listening about all the positive. I'm going to share this presentation with the day parents because I haven't had that opportunity. So you'll notice what's captured in a lot of the comments are, I'd like to hear what the teachers think, right? Because their children are coming home saying, I want my cell phone. And that's kind of the problem.
Thank you for that feedback because we also, realize sometimes when we develop the survey questions, depending how you word the questions, sometimes you could not get the very clear answers because the question itself are probably not well thought of. So probably, I don't know if we need to do another one. I know it takes time and some parents are too busy to even respond those surveys.
Can I add one more thing about that? I also don't want to represent, as you can see, not all parents are in favor. Some are worried, like you're accosting my child as they walk through the door. Like that's their lens. Like, why are you checking? If I want my child to have a cell phone, they should have a cell phone. It's a family decision. And there's some feedback around that. Like it's not aligning with the values of what we want as a school system. It's a small group, but I want to acknowledge their voices and lift them up. To say that everyone is in full support wouldn't be a fair statement.
I'm sorry, last sentence again.
To say that every parent at Day Middle School is 100% behind this would not be a fair statement.
Okay. Again, that's kind of a reminder for our school committee. If we are going to develop some policies or MPS would, help us develop, implement, we have to think about those issues. Even though the teachers probably, you would say 90% teachers will strongly support.
I haven't found a teacher that disagrees with it yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, that could be challenging, when you have, almost all faculty support and parents only half and the other half hardly. And then I don't know if we can really effectively enforce these policies, even though we have ones.
I think the other thing that I would make note is there's just a little bit over 250 respondents for this survey, right? And we have, 868 families a day. So I think like this is like any survey, it's we need to look at who responded.
There's so-called silent majority there.
Absolutely. That may not have taken the survey, but they agree with it or even disagree. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep. Tamika, go ahead.
I'll keep it brief. So I wanted to just talk about something that I don't think we've touched on, which is the cumulative effect of this positive kind of reinforcement of the policy. Sixth grade this year, they're the start, right? I'm on the other end. I've got the eighth graders who were like, this is not good. And I'm paraphrasing there. But with the sixth grade, next year will be better. The implementation will be a little smoother. They'll be familiar with it. They'll say, okay, I remember it. I didn't like it, but I'm going to do it. And it's that muscle memory. So I think we're missing the fact that a tool like this is going to only reinforce, and that reinforcement is going to grow and pervade over time. And by the time they hit high school, maybe not my eighth graders, but by the time our sixth graders hit high school, some of those positive behaviors of how we engage with our devices during the school day they'll have a better effect. We're going to test this, I'm sure, but I don't see a reality where that couldn't be the case, where they haven't developed these skills and reinforced them year over year, and then aren't practicing them to our benefit. So bravo. I think it's wonderful, and figuring out how to implement broadly is great.
Okay.
And I'm apologizing to my friend Jackie Mann. You know I love you.
So real quickly, what I'd like to do is if folks can just share their thoughts on where we think we need to go as a committee with this next, because I don't want to leave this hanging as a, this is amazing. This Yonder program was enormous. I mean, it's objectively, it was tremendously successful. You know, we don't have funding for it in the budget right now for next year. We're not sure how that's going to happen. It would cost us $50,000 to implement that if we chose to do so across our 4 middle schools. There's a question of what we do in high school. There's a question of what we do in elementary school. We don't have a policy. I mean, I kind of disagree with Mayor Fuller a little bit that, yes, I think any policy will have to be, you know, intensely informed from the, you know, the boots on the ground educators who are going to have to implement it. And, you know, I think to Amy's questions, it requires a large coordination of building administration to, you know, and I think, you know, having a clear policy might help to, you know, make clear what those, you know, we're not speaking in expectations anymore. This is the, you know, this is the law inside these 4 buildings, so to speak. I mean, I think as a committee, you know, working with our administration, working with our teachers, we can develop a policy. And it's not going to look the same. I wouldn't think so at all 3 levels. It would be very different.
I just want to point out that there's a big difference between a policy versus protocols. And policy is the high level, you know, why are we doing things, and how we do them is what's in the protocol. And so the very different in the elementary versus middle versus high school, I think should be in a protocol, not necessarily in a policy.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that. And I don't want to entirely conflate the two. But at the same time, you know, I don't know if I want to leave it hanging to, okay, we have, you know, a policy that's not really going to be enforced, implemented, left to individual teachers to fight their own battles. And, you know, putting some kind of consistency in place, I think would likely be helpful.
Totally agree. And we've had processes like that with other policies and the supporting protocols in the past. So this is not like we're starting from scratch. So.
Could I make a proposal? Just listening, I think it's prudent for us to canvass our colleagues across the Commonwealth and the nation and find the model policies that you could review and work with our school committee subcommittee for policy to produce those for you. And then on the school side, think about the procedures that we think we can live with. You know, certainly I don't want to pull Day back from its glory and splendor and Yonder. But we just want to make sure that we have something that's sustainable over time. So we can certainly bring those to you in terms of district goals for next year under student social emotional wellness and continuing those goal areas. And maybe that's, you know, includes more survey work as by level, all kinds of things that have come out of this discussion. I've written down a whole list of to-dos that could be a component of working with our principals in that. If you would like that, we can bring you those pieces.
Okay. So I guess from your perspective, Dr. Nolan, what would be the reasonable time frame with which to revisit this?
Well, the end of the year is fast upon us. So I think, you know, it's not realistic for me by June to bring you all the things that I just said. We can certainly get the policy committee up and running and looking and digesting models, and then we can bring to you a goal in the fall as part of the last bridge district goals before we do the strategic plan that indicates how we will operate with our principal group in the coming year, and perhaps more wide scale pilots if that's what I just feel like we have to talk to the principals about what I mean, we had no conversations with elementary principals at all, and to expect them to implement something in the fall seems hard.
Rajiv, did you, and then Emily?
So a couple of comments. Dr. Nolan, what you laid out makes sense. I wish we could accelerate some of it, and I understand there are reasons, important reasons for us to make sure we have the right outreach to principals, we're educators and our families. One thing that I would suggest potentially, again, is thinking of whether there is a policy with accompanying protocols that could be put in place for elementary schools, because that could potentially help address the students coming into middle schools and again, maybe ease the challenges from the get-go. And there's probably broader agreement at the elementary level between teachers, parents, and administrators in terms of what we could do. So we don't necessarily have to put in policies for all three levels all at the same time. So just a thought on that. The other thing is I don't know what the challenges would be in terms of losing momentum at day, right? So we have something in place that seems to be working well. We do need additional parent feedback and communication, clearly. But that said, are there ways we could think about continuing that progress while trying to figure out what happens at the other three middle schools? I'd like us to think about that, because a 1-year break will mean starting from scratch, right? So just a couple of comments on that, but thank you.
Emily, Mayor Fuller, Amy?
This is going to be super quick because my comment was exactly what Rajiv just said in terms of making sure that we don't lose momentum and trying to find a way to expand this into the other three middle schools.
Ditto. If I understood Jackie correctly, the cost for next year at day is minimal. It's the replacement of some yonder pouches that have been damaged. And whether there's a quick grant application to the Newton Schools Foundation, for example, if there's a second middle school that might be interested, that could at least start another grade in another school, or grades, or another middle school, whatever. Let's move forward quickly. I am convinced from what Jackie described that this is right and good and appropriate, even though it's complicated for the kids and some parents maybe have some concerns that need to be talked about.
Amy?
To build off of Mayor Fuller's point, I think the logical expansion would be to Bigelow, given that both middle schools will be arriving at one place. And so you won't have two constituents coming in having experienced really different expectations. It's also small and mighty, and therefore carries a smaller price tag for implementation. Liam, I did notice that our planned carry forward balance is a little bit under what we've got. So I'm just there. It seems like there's $100K floating around out there on the next memo. I actually would say two other things to my other colleagues' points. I think that elementary's focus should be around family engagement next year rather than on policy. I think that middle school and high school parents know what has happened and see what's happening with their children. I don't think elementary parents are prepared, which is part of where things get away from us. So I think a really thoughtful community engagement platform would be probably the best step while we continue to pilot at the middle school. And then in terms of broad policy with a P, there are places within our current policies where we do address acceptable use. And I think it would be helpful to at least start there to think about how we can interpret that language as we look at best practices elsewhere across the state.
Thank you, Amy. Your earlier point, yes, we have to say internet-enabled devices and not cell phones, because as I'm sure all our children tell us, people who say cell phones are old. It's just phones now. Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with not losing the momentum in the middle school. I understand your point about Bigelow, but I just don't want to lose sight of to give some love to the South Side.
Yes.
We have the same issues, and I get the point about being consistent, but if we could even get one of the middle schools on the South Side as part of this program, I know I would be extremely happy. even though my kid's far away from middle school.
I will share, I was at Bigelow for 2 days last week for the our principal finalist days, and the Bigelow students were very clear they were not interested in the Yonder pilot expanding to Bigelow.
It's the word on the street to avoid.
So helpful.
I mean, you didn't know that. You are in charge of.
Can I just ask a kind of question of the committee? And I mean, are people of the mindset that this should be extended to all 4 middle schools, and the only thing that's preventing it is $50,000?
Can I say something to that point?
Please go ahead.
I would like to make a important point that this comes with significant costs in terms of time. Time, effort, priority setting for our school leaders and for educators or anybody who's going to be implementing a program like Yonder. So I do want to say, I think it's one we're likely quite willing to make because there's payoff educationally for our students, for our staff, for our administrators, but that needs to be part of the equation. And as a matter of precedent, I would just say just because we can pay for something doesn't mean that it needs to be something that we're going to put all our time and effort into. Again, I'm not speaking to this specific situation, but more generally. So it's just something to consider.
Also, just want to remember the 2 years of work that the day school did before the implementation of Yonder. So I guess we have to assess where our other middle schools are on that journey.
And that's fair enough. I wasn't envisioning we're going to, vote a program tonight. I'm just kind of trying to take the temperature of the folks. And I mean, I'm hearing, 100% of our teachers love this and want this. I am quite certain, despite that big orange, not sure, it's at least a majority of our families. And I mean, I think that those of us with kids of that age are fighting this battle constantly. So, is there opposition to that viewpoint of this is something we'd like to do if it was, if the money was readily available? Barry, go ahead.
Can we ask as a next step that maybe Dr. Nolan or someone in the administration just at least talk to the principals and get their thoughts on what if we did do this before we make any decisions?
I can also use my superintendent's advisory, and we're pulling them together to talk website. We can talk cell phone policies at the same time. What's that? Just phone. Sorry, I'm old.
Tamika, go ahead.
So I would love for all 4 middle schools to be able to next year start on this, but it sounds like there's a bit of legwork and making sure that the schools are going to have policies. Like I, as a parent, understood the day policy, that's happening prior to or contemporaneous to implementing something like the Yonder pouch. And then the other point I wanted to make is that I, as a parent, although my kids they're coming to you, Henry, but if I'm looking at middle school and those years when the kids, they don't have control over their impulses and they need help, and this is a tool to help them, I, as a parent, would consider it something like a set of goggles for their science classes. It's a tool that allows them to access their curriculum. And so as such, I think there's an avenue where we might think of how we can ask parents and leverage our the partnerships with our PTOs, the Newton Schools Foundation, et cetera. I know at the end of the year, as the mayor assesses her final tally on her budget, sometimes the snow plowing is not as plentiful and there's extra funds there. So I think to the extent that we can fund something like this, we should be looking at those opportunities.
Okay. Any, Rajiv, go ahead.
But I do understand and agree with Toby's point around the outreach and the preparedness and so on. It was very interesting to see that it's the senior administrators, Jackie, that are working to enforce Yonder use. So would all middle schools be up for that? I would hope so, but it's certainly not something I think we can take for granted. But having said that, Chris, I think that middle schools would be the priority. Continuing the momentum at day would be a priority. And we need to think creatively about how we get there. I'm also quite disappointed that the sad faces drawn on the yonder pouch didn't sway you, but probably, yeah.
I've seen it enough, Rajiv. Anping, go ahead.
Just quick. I agree that middle school is the urgency. You know, I don't know if elementary school probably it's coming. But yeah, I don't want to lose the momentum. And but regarding the parent feedback, I know that we have the parent new app, the Foursquare or
Parent Square, yep.
yeah, Parent Square. Probably we can use this as one of the first major questions as parents. Please, this is something we're deliberating right now, school committee. We need your feedback. If half the parents are not quite sure, say middle school parents are not sure, then we probably need to take a little bit of time to deliberate why there's such kind of uncertainty or even resistance. But if the silent majority speaks, well, we support you, then I feel confident we should move ahead and let's start. And because this urgency is really getting worse. And if we start middle school, hopefully by high school, the kids have some good habits, better habits, at least for some students. And also send out a signal to the elementary school students and parents, hey, we are serious about this and we want to work together. So hopefully we get more parent support. There's something, because it seems it's getting worse and worse very quickly. The technology it is kind of getting a little bit out of control now with the AI coming. I don't know. I have a little bit pessimistic about this outlook about the technology going. Thanks.
Yep.
I could just say real quick, the slippery slope is really slippery as parents make decisions around whether to buy their child a device. And so I do think that your comments about education of elementary school parents is something that is urgent, because that slippery slope just happens really, really quickly. And parents, in my understanding or my observations, don't really have all the information of what they're choosing. And their biggest fear is their child's safety. And so thinking about, as a community, what are we recommending that students can have that are a GPS device so they can be tracked, but they don't have to have a high-powered mobile phone where they can text and get on social media. So I do think that feels more urgent. It doesn't necessarily require school principals to be on board with it. It feels more parent education that could be more urgent there.
Okay, thank you. I think this is I think it's been a good discussion. I feel like we're kind of developing a sense of priority of where to take our next steps, and I'd certainly like us to do that sooner rather than later. So
We'll try to curate a strategy for you that will take into account all of that you said tonight and takes into account educator and administrator perspectives.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Jackie.
The next item on the agenda is a fiscal and ops update. Liam is available. I don't know, Liam, just see if it's, after 9 o'clock. I know we still have probably a lengthy discussion in front of us. Maybe we can just poll members to see if there is questions on the fiscal and ops report. Liam normally does quite a thorough job and doesn't leave a whole lot to the imagination. So, yes, Emily.
Very quick question, because I honestly don't remember at this point. Do we have to vote on the supplemental CIP, or do we only vote in October?
That's a good question. We've typically just voted in the October. This is basically supplemental, so we've typically not done that at this point.
Thank you.
Other questions for Liam? Yes, go ahead.
I just want to remind everyone that our upcoming budget for the next year requires us to carry forward $3 million. And this does not accommodate what we may need to do to restore kindergarten aides if that comes to pass. So I just want to keep everyone, moving in that direction related to, what we still need for curriculum and training and all of those types of supplies and things that haven't yet been restored.
Yeah, that's right. We needed to carry forward $3 million. Astutely taking a look. Thank you. Amy, take a look at that. We're projecting a little more than $3 million for next year. Trying to spend it. There's a lot of obviously competing needs. In future budgets, ideally, we would not have that kind of dependence. I think ideally it would be lower than that. We looked at this. We've certainly got the education stabilization account as well, but it's something I think we should be really mindful in terms of what's that tolerance level. It's a big number for us to carry forward. We have been doing a number in between $2 and $4 million the last couple of years, but it's $3 million is a relatively large number. And so it's something we're going to achieve this year, but I just certainly want to make sure we can do that each and every year.
Rajiv?
Liam, detailed memo, always helpful. Very minor question. The resident district manager for food services, is that person a Chartwell's employee or an NPS employee? It wasn't really clear because it looked like some of our team had interviewed her, but it didn't seem like she was necessarily an NPS employee.
Correct. So yeah, David Stickney, myself, Amy Mistro, that will be a Chartwell's employee. So we interviewed, so this is our new food service company taking over for Whitson's in July, and that was fully a Chartwell's employee.
Got it. But she will be focused on Newton.
She'll be based in Newton. She'll be residing at Newton North. They have an incredible team. If you haven't, and I'd be happy to get at you, but they have a dietitian fully dedicated to Newton. They actually have an engagement officer, completely dedicated to Newton. They have 3 chef managers completely dedicated to Newton. They've got, and I think that was the thing that we were particularly impressed with was their staffing level and their commitment to us, what they really want to put in there. This is again a big district, and so they're all Chartwell's employees. Amy, among the many things that she does, and is kind of trying to oversee that food service program. But all those staff, including the food service workers, they're actually in a union, but they're all technically, and most of them have said they'd like to stay. They'll go from being probably a Whitson's employee, hopefully, to a Chartwell's employee.
Great. No, thank you. And I'm glad we had the opportunity to interview her before she took on the role. So
yes,
that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any other questions for Liam? Okay. Thank you very much, Liam, as always.
Okay.
I apologize for not putting that in front of cell phones and
No worries. It's okay.
made it home earlier tonight. All right, last item on the agenda is discussion on school choice with a final vote scheduled for tonight. We've certainly been at this several times now. We've had Dr. Nolan and her team submit a sort of final analysis, so to speak, a week ago, and we've had a couple members, including myself, submit something for the record here. So who'd like to get us kicked off?
I just want to say thank you, Rajiv and Tamika and Chris and Ruth Ann, for your comments and statements that you have made. I think we're at our best when we are open and we're having that dialogue and turning this issue around for the community. And I want to thank the community members who've all written in with various perspectives. Super helpful to hear from all different perspectives on this matter.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll go. So Dr. Nolan's, as everyone is well aware, has proposed that we implement a school choice program of 70 students at the elementary level. I know some members have already expressed support for opting into school choice, and some members have expressed opposition. I personally think that 70 feels a little heavy to enter into this, given some of the unknowns, and some of these things will remain unknowns until we experience them. There's just, some of them are
questions that will never be fully answered. You can't have certainty. And so, you know, I kind of landed at, I think this can make sense for the district. I think it can bring in incremental revenue. And I think we all appreciate our need to find incremental revenue and efficiency. And I kind of landed on a number of 30 seats, some of which, of course, in all likelihood would be filled by students who are already sitting in those seats as children of staff members. But just to think through this, and I really want to, you know, I think some of the conversation in the community and even within the committee has gotten off topic a little bit. This is a discrete vote as to whether we are going to enter into this program for year 25, in which case every child we accept into that program will be able to attend our schools until they graduate, if they so choose. And that is it. That is what we are voting on. And so in the memo I laid out, it shows, you know, the progression of those students. If we implemented 6 students in K through 4 for a total of 30, again, this would not, despite the fact many of those seats would be filled by, or some of those seats would very likely be filled by children already in NPS. This shows the full impact. The last of those students would graduate in 2037. And when we think about the impact of this in years, for year 25 and 26, our peak number at elementary school would be 30 students, which is an average of 2 students per school. If they were distributed throughout the district in the sort of most optimal manner, 6 schools would have 1 student at any given grade level, and 9 schools would have 0 students at any given grade level. As those students matriculate to middle school, their peak years are for year 29, for year 30, and for year 31. There would be a total of 18 students, 4.5 students per school. 2 of our middle schools would have 1 extra student at each grade level. 2 of our middle schools would have 2 extra students at each grade level. As they go to high school for year 33 and 34, 24 students, 12 per high school. Each high school would have 3 extra students at each grade level. That's the impact of what we're talking about on the vote for this year. The net dollars, I see that funding NPS would be about $700,000 over the life of the program. And I've heard a lot of the arguments about how this is going to be, breaking the back of our system. And I just don't see that level of increase producing that. And so I think this can be done in a risk mitigated way. Beyond that revenue it would bring in, and I have seen nobody publish any numbers to paper, pen to paper, that show numbers that say this would be a financial negative. I've heard the argument, but I've seen no analysis that indicates that. But beyond the revenue that this would bring in, I think more important, it would give us a ton of information as to what this would really look like in practice, what the applicant pool would look like, what the burden would look like, and it would put us in a much, much more informed position to say, this is something we want to do the following year or the year after. Or, hey, this didn't work out as expected. The benefits weren't there. It had some unintended consequences, and we have that group of students, and we know exactly what that group of students looks like. There's no mystery to this. There's no, great unknown. We're talking about 30 students in a district of 12,000. So I think this can be done in a reasonable, risk mitigated way.
Did receive one question from a member. You tell me when that should happen.
Go ahead, you can answer that now.
So Aisha is going to answer this question. And she knows, even though she just looks surprised. This is the one about assignment of students to schools that we discussed this morning. The member asks, it would help me to know, should this program open, when and how buffer zone students, Boston resident student placements happen in this context. We had said that placements would be shared in August. What happens before then? And how do we, quote unquote, know there is room by 8/1 of the summer?
So we monitor, so currently right now, just let me back up a little bit, just outside of school choice for a moment in terms of the enrollment processes. So we're currently enrolling our kindergarten students. Those students, we're on a rolling basis right now, assigning those students to classes because the priority is for our incoming K families to be able to participate in screening and orientation and all of the beginning of your school career events that are happening at the schools. Once that window closes and and our schools are beyond the date by which they're engaging in screening exercises and things of that sort, then we close down the buffer zone placements throughout the summer. What that allows us to do is to then exercise the flexibility that the buffer zones are designed to allow us to right-size classrooms and manage the distribution of students across the district based on the enrollment. So throughout the summer months, students will continue to enroll. Those are held we currently are running the numbers weekly. We look at those weekly. Throughout the summer, we're managing that and monitoring those numbers. On the week of August 19th, I review all of the registrations that are awaiting placement in the aggregate. So everybody at that point, we have processed all of the summer registrations and can see for folks who are not in buffer zones, how those have impacted enrollment. At that point, then we look at buffer zones placements. We look at transfer requests. Those are requests from Newton residents to attend a school outside of the one to which they are districted. And we look at the placement of staff children at that time as well. Any students accepted through school choice would be looked at at the conclusion of those processes, but in that end of August timeline.
Awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Thoughts from anyone else? Barry?
Yeah, try to put my thoughts together on this topic. I agree with you. I think 70 is too much right now. I like your idea of 30. I, however, feel that we as a community and as a school committee have not done a great job communicating this topic. I've gotten more in-person and email questions than I could have imagined, confusing the issues, unclear on the topic. And I'm concerned that because we got sidetracked from this topic a little bit during the strike, that we just didn't give it a proper time for the community to vet this properly and really understand the benefits of it. So I like the idea of 30. I just think I like the idea of 30 next year. And that's where I stand on the issue.
It's too bad our final in-person speaker is not here to hear us both kind of owning some failures on the part of the school committee. I would go even further, I think, Barry, on what you've said. I'll start by saying I think that trying school choice is probably the right thing to do. And I think that we failed to gain our community's trust in the aftermath of the strike in a way that makes sense to me. Even though I think that we feel like we've been talking about this for a long time, so much so that like none of us even wants to start talking now. I don't think that the community feels like we've been talking about it for a long time. And I think part of that feeling, and this is going to sound accusatory, and so I apologize, is that we had a communication come out from the district citing one kind of pilot and a communication that went out to the entire city that cited different information. And I like, that's on all of us because it shows that like we're not all communicating effectively, regardless of 3 really thoughtful, beautiful memos and statements to the globe and statements to the community. And if we can't do that yet, I don't know how we can invite further rifts in community trust. And so I think we still have work to do ensuring that we have a unified message that people can really access. And for me, a 30-person pilot is so subscale that I don't see that we will get really important insight from it. Particularly because we have so many small elementary schools that at a level of 30, I don't know that we'll get a representative understanding of how many staff children will get in if the sample sale is bigger. I also think that at a scale of 30, 2 new move-ins or move-outs can drastically tip the scales when there are so many small elementary schools. And so I worry that not only will we not reap the financial benefit, which is really motivating this choice, we also won't get the information that we really need. So I think for me, at the end of the day, our primary goal has to be getting more Newton families to choose Newton. And I don't think we will achieve that by further dividing the community right now.
Tamika?
Thanks. So Amy, I think you laid out much of the complexity of doing this particular strategy at this particular time and why it's so fraught very well. I agree with how you've captured it. And Chris, I'm going to push back a little hard in your assessment that we can't have a nuanced conversation about all of the reasons that we, as committee members who are duly charged with exploring this issue and weighing the pros, weighing the cons, and doing so beyond just the limited scope of, is there a financial benefit? Can we implement next year? I think that's way too narrow a viewpoint to take. And for us to analyze whether this is not just right for now, but hey, Barry, maybe we pick it up next year and we take a look at it next year. Then, as well as now, we should be looking at this broadly. We should be thinking, what are the impacts? What are the consequences, the soft and the hard, the ones that have repercussions beyond which the desks that we sit at and out there into the voting body of Newton residents? We don't do what we're doing here in isolation. We need voters' support and trust in order to scale all of the admirable things that our superintendent has put before us. We can't do it alone. The past 2-3 years have shown us that we can't do it alone. We need their buy-in. And to jeopardize buy-in by doing something so arbitrary as, hell, 70, that was arbitrary number. I don't know where that came from, but it was, okay, we put a line in the sand. 30, that's incredibly arbitrary. Where's that even coming from? What will that do? What will that gain us? I don't have an answer to that. I don't think anyone does. And therefore, because the answers are limited and the questions are vast, that sells what we need to do. And that right now is vote no on this. And I'm going to back up a little bit. It's good to explore. It's good to have the conversation. We don't necessarily need to follow this down the rabbit hole of implementing this when it's not right for our district and it's not right for our kids. It's not going to benefit them. It's too narrow what are we talking about? $700,000 over what, 13 years? I didn't get through your entire memo. I apologize. You gave it no update or no notice that it was there. And therefore I didn't have an opportunity to dive in and digest. And I apologize for that. But next time, just give a heads up. I submitted something and I want you all to take a look. That would help us do our jobs. Beyond that, of course, we're going to think about how does this impact our students? How does this impact our community? Beyond that, of course, we're going to look at some of the points Rajiv raised about how is this going to impact the delivery of services to our students? And beyond that, if I'm looking at something like the staff retention and the fact that I'm saying I think it's going to give us a weakened staff retention tool, heck yeah, I should be able to consider that. We should be able to consider that. It's not outside the scope of our analysis. It is our analysis. So I'm a no, surprise to no one. And I think, commend you for putting this before us. No, thank you for picking it up.
Other comments? Emily?
Amy, I really appreciate your comments, especially around timing, right? Because I've been talking about that too for a while now. So I really appreciate that, and also the concept of sort of focusing internally and getting our house in order internally. And I also, the $700,000 over 13 years is not going to move the needle in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, we should be thinking beyond that. And this is not about the mayor, please. I just want to make the statement, but like we need to be thinking about alternative ways to find funding for Newton Public Schools. And I don't think that school choice is the way to do it. Whether that means that's an override in 3 or 4 years or not, but and it's up to us also to help make that case. So I'm just going to put that out there. We need additional funding. I think that we all agree with that. But I don't think that school choice is the way to do it. There are winners and losers in school choice, which I know doesn't necessarily resonate with everyone here, but it does to me from a financial perspective in terms of sending and receiving districts. I've not been for this from day one. There's a reason why none of our communities around us have done this. And I stand by the fact that even if they did, now is not the time to do it. I mean, we've had such a tumultuous winter. We're finally starting to return back to some normalcy, but there's still a lot of emotions. There's still a lot of community members who aren't feeling trust. And this is not the time. Thanks.
Other comments? Oh, I'm paying, go ahead.
I agree. This is a difficult issue, but also I had a feeling it's little bit overblown, and we went through the difficult tumultuous time, as Emily mentioned, that strike. We received probably close to 1,000 mails, if not more, and turned out, I think many people probably were not totally correct when they made all the assessment about Newton school system or about the city budget. And also we learned from middle school, the day school, when Jack Mann mentioned the parent survey. When I pushed, say, oh, only about 200 some parents responded out of 800 parents. So the signed majority is still there. We did not hear from them. So even though this time we got that many emails, but no way to compare with the email we received during the strike. And I could see there's some anxiety, that there's some strong feeling there. I could see that, and I agree. If they follow certain logic. And I'm not quite sure if we all got information. And I'm willing to say that I put a lot of trust in our superintendent, Anna Nolan, and she did the work. The Natick School had a school choice programs 3 years, and she also did the analysis. If people read carefully about the email, the memo she sent out April 26th, I think that a lot of the anxiety could be alleviated a bit, or even more than that. So I like to highlight 3 points. First, I appreciate all the feedback from community. That's very healthy, very constructive. Most of emails constructive. And even though the critical ones still force us to think about that. And I think I appreciate that. And I thank for those emails to think about that. Now, in terms of special education, if Dr. Nolan was correct, for those students, DESE would reimburse 96%. That figure probably could, if not the exact correct, but certainly the majority of the expense will be reimbursed. That's one of the major concern for many parents who said, oh, the special needs students will overrun our Newton school system. I thought probably we had a little bit too much pride in our Newton school system. And I look at the past 3 or 4 years, special needs students population was not increasing, but it even dropped a little bit from, used to be 20%, now it's about 18, little bit over 18%. And for those out school district spare students, the number was not changing, about 6%. So in past few years, if Newton school system is so good for special education, our number will be much higher, will be increasing more than 19%, 20%, 25%, but there's no change in that sense. So of course, we feel proud of our special education program in Newton. Could be nationally known. Of course, I cannot say with confidence that for this school open programs, say open 30 seats, some people predict there will be 10 times more applicants, or 300 parents, the families will apply, or 300 possible applicants will be. And I doubt that number, that popular. Based on the other school choice programs, seems not that huge number. So, and also, I would say this is an extraordinary time in terms of financial situation. We went through this extraordinary time, never happened before. So school choice program could be something never happened, as people said again, our peer district, no one adopt this, we haven't done this for all those years. Well, I guess everybody knows what's the think out of box. Well, let's try a little bit. 30 numbers, very small, manageable. And this could be calculated risk if there were risks. I think could be a learning process. And some people might argue, or I could imagine say, well, why should we take this risk? Why we have so many other things? But I think this is a good initiative. And I appreciate that superintendent and the leadership were willing to think about that. They will have extra work to do. But I think symbolically speaking, this is a good gesture to send to the community. We have serious financial challenges. We need to do everything possible. And I want to use example. Toby said we might need $50,000 for the Yoda for the middle school the program Yoda program. Okay, $50,000. That could make difference. $50,000. We could hire 3, probably 4 social workers. That will make huge difference for elementary schools when we argue for that. Money is money. We need money. And why we can say, well, we should have found more money, and we can all look at our mayor To find money, well, that's not easy. We tried very hard. We did find some money, but now this is a crunch time. So overall, based on all these thinkings, I'm willing to give support, and 30 students, I think that's very sensible number to start with. Who knows? We might find a lot of benefits, and in the future, we have better sense if we want to expand, scale this program. This will be a good start. Thanks.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
Go ahead, please.
Mayor Fuller?
First, thank you to our superintendent. While I have voted on this for 6 previous years, I had not done a deep dive, so I came into this with an open mind. She was absolutely right to bring this forward and have us think about this. I want to agree with the issues that Barry and Amy and Tamika and Emily raised. I think the financial returns are quite limited and actually questionable. I think the risks are quite high. This is not a pilot. This is a non-reversible if they come in at kindergarten, but about roughly 13-year experiment with many downsides. I do not think the marginal cost analysis nearly includes the actual full soft or hard costs related to this. And the short-term and long-term harm to the school community and broader community is large. The widespread concerns from such different stakeholders, we heard from leaders of PTOs, from CPAC members, from parents and guardians at all levels of the systems, from a leader within the NTA, I heard it from city councilors, from former school committee members, from the League of Women Voters. This is an extraordinary time on Ping. I agree with that, but our most critical role right now is rebuilding the confidence in our district. And a yes vote on this, and I admire you, Chris, for trying to bring forward a compromise. Actually, I think even at 30, erodes that confidence, creates more divisiveness, and undermines what Emily was speaking about with, I think someday we'll figure out when, asking voters to dig deeper to support our children in the Newton Public Schools and the vision of our superintendent is likely to be upon us, because I'm very clear about what under Prop 2.5, what the growth in the school budget will be, unless there's some unusual event that I can't imagine. They do happen. Barry's suggestion, or maybe it was Amy or Amy and Barry's, come back to this in another year. But I certainly am deeply concerned about voting yes for this at this time in the life of our schools and our community.
So, I think all of you have heard me expressed my opinion on school choice in the 8 or so meetings that we've had on school choice. So I'm not going to belabor that. I hope you read my memo. If you didn't, you probably heard it already, right? So just a couple of thoughts on this. Chris, I did not know you had a document in. I've tried to scan it quickly. I did read the memo from Dr. Nolan and the admin team in some detail. I have separate concerns about each one. What you put in front of us, Chris, looks at revenue, not net income. It's missing something really significant, which is what are the downsides? The memo from the school administration had certain assumptions that I could quibble with, but the other issue there was minimal discussion of the downsides. And when I look at this, when I look at school choice, it's really about risk versus reward. What would we gain versus what we might lose? And there is the possibility for a significant downside. And again, I'm speaking just financially, without necessarily a significant upside. What concerns me even more, and I tried to make this point in my memo, is I can tell you that the way education works now today is, and I studied in a different country, in a different system, but it's completely different, I think, also from what most of us experience. It's very much a team sport. It's a team effort. It's given how we are structuring education, especially at the elementary level, but across all levels, and how we bring in the right supports, how we're looking at putting in MTSS in a much more significant way. How much it costs us to add a class teacher significantly undercounts the actual effort and resources required to educate a student. We need the math aides, we need the ELA aides, we need specialists. We desperately need trusted adults and social workers and guidance counselors who are already at capacity. And making a long-term commitment for what I see as a very short-term financial benefit, I think would have a detrimental impact on the education of our students. A lot of what I'm saying could look completely different if you change the assumptions going into it. And I acknowledge that. You could have optimistic assumptions. You could say, well, circuit breaker is going to be fully funded. Or you could say, we're going to roll the dice, and what will happen is that every single staff student who applies is going to get in, because it could happen. If the dice falls a certain way, that could absolutely happen. I think the likelihood is that it wouldn't. And then that leaves us in a situation where our educational resources are more strained, and our financial resources to try and make up for that strain are not there. So I continue to be extremely concerned about school choice as a program, and I will not be voting in favor of it.
Thanks, Rajiv. Just a point of clarification. In the memo I wrote, the financial impact is net of expenses, and that is assumed at, we retain 80% of the $5,000 tuition at the elementary level, which is consistent with the analysis that was in the administration's memo of April 26. We retain 0% of the $5,000 at high school, where there's a fairly linear scaling of enrollment and teachers. And that simple math is roughly 20 students is at $5,000 a piece is $100,000, which is approximately the cost of a teacher. And middle school residing in the middle at 50%, where you have some of that linear dynamic, but not quite the extent that you have in high school. So those numbers do reflect the fully baked expected costs of the program, and it's not a revenue number. It actually is a net funding number.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. I disagree with your assumptions around high school. I disagree with the assumptions around the breakdown of students and what those expenses would be, because if we luck out and it's kind of low need students across the board, that's fantastic. If not, that's not so good. So I'll leave it at that. You know, we, as I said, the assumptions really drive a lot of these things. I still see, you know, significant potential downside on the financial side. And I see, except for the small number of significantly under-enrolled elementary school classes that we have, I see no educational upside. So I think that's where we are.
Dr. Nolan?
I'm sure we want to move the question, but I just wanted to say, I feel very fortunate that we were able to have this conversation. Change often creates fear and mistrust. I have optimistic feelings about this program because I successfully ran it in my district for a long time, and it was really life-changing money for us to do programmatic additions. And I do want to thank the staff for a pretty deep analysis. I was asked by you to create scenarios. We created many. I just want to debunk the idea that a speaker raised earlier that there was no modeling done or anything. There were many, many scenarios done. And you asked us to make a recommendation of a specific number, so we did. So there are many iterations. I picked 70 because we as a team agreed that we felt that was what we could withstand, understanding all the concerns that you have. I just want to say, second, that I am concerned that, you know, we do not want to bring forward anything that's going to lose our community's trust. I also know that you're going to vote this every single year. And at some point we have to answer the question, what is the application rate going to be like? Because that is the issue that we cannot predict, right? So I can tell you a lot of things about running programs in other places. I know that our chair reached out to other districts and asked about their experience, but it's the application rate for our region that is something we're never going to know unless we take it on. 700K over 13 years isn't going to do it. But as Anping just said, and as we all agree, I feel we had to turn over every possible option for revenue generation, given the financial constraints that we have. I have to say, when we have to restore K-AIDS, if that is the case, that's over $825,000 not added to our current budget. And to Rajiv's point, to degrade the additional social workers, the high school class sizes, and the elementary support that we just put in place, I just feel like we had to turn over every possible solution. So I feel very fortunate that we had this. Good news is we'll be back here next year, same time, same space, maybe the same players. So I guess just a word to the community, we will discuss this again, and we are happy to collect questions and to collect things if we need a slower grow model on this. I still feel like it is the right thing to try, but I understand and appreciate all of the divergent perspectives that have been brought here. So thank you very much for being that kind of board.
And I'm just going to continue on that theme for 1 second, if I may. You know, look, I think there's those of us who think this is something we should be trying, whether it's now or whether it's something that we should be trying, but we're not going to do this year. I think we're all of the same opinion that it's what's in the best interest of our students, because we need to find funding. And there's not a $3 million silver bullet out there, but there might be, you know, 10 $300,000 bullets. You know, this isn't about this discrete vote is about that cohort of 30 students coming through our system and that $700,000. But again, as I said, it's really the information that we would derive, which would tell us whether this is something that can be successful, that
it can be bigger and it can be more financially impactful. So, you know, I wouldn't diminish this based on the, you know, the sole $700,000 decision we're making today. I won't belabor this too long because I can count. But, you know, I do want to say there's a philosophical point of view where I believe that there are some sitting at the table who would never vote for this under any set of circumstances ever because you're philosophically opposed to it, and that's fine. That's fair that you carry that opinion. There's been a lot of talk about the risks and the financial impacts, and I have not seen a single number from anyone who has talked about the risks and the financial impacts that are going to be negative, that are going to be harmful. I have not seen one single dollar put forth by anyone. And so I think it's a tough debate to have when, and I brought this up before, you have a very known, fixed, capped upside, but this uncertainty to the downside. And I think we need to be willing to engage with what that looks like if we're really going to have a robust debate on this. To the point of next year, I think, and I'm going to stay on brand and be pessimistic here, I think you're delusional if you think this is going to pass next year. I think this is a once and done. No one is going to want to relive this debate again. There is not going to be new information.
Me.
I'm just being realistic. There is a limited number of districts in the Commonwealth that would be applicable to us. There is not going to be new districts that are applicable to us next year. We have talked with administrators. I think the administration has put forth a defensible analysis. We had 4 people show up at a public hearing. I would just say, don't kid yourself that there's going to be some groundswell change that occurs between this year and next year. This was brought forth with a new superintendent taking a fresh look at things, and I think there is 0% chance it'll even be debated next year in a meaningful way. That's just my opinion. Yep. Barry, you had your hand up first, and then Tamika.
Okay. I wanted to say that I realized I didn't initially say thank you to Dr. Nolan and her team for the very deep analysis that was done. It was very useful. So I want to be clear, what I feel we failed on is communicating it as a school committee. The data we asked for, we received, and it was very clear. And I think what we need to do better the next time is how we communicate what we're doing, what we're thinking about doing, and the plans to our community. So I'm just putting it out there now. I'm prepared to talk about it in more depth next year, and I want to. I also just think, I understand your point, Chris. I just think that this was a exceptionally difficult year, and that for me, it played into it.
Thank you. So I disagree that we failed our community. I think part of the issue here is that, and this is something I've talked about with many of you, our community pays attention to things like this when they become, this tantamount, embroiling thing that like consumes the news cycle and really gets everyone talking. It's not that we weren't talking about it. It's that folks paid attention at the point at which they paid attention to it. But sidestepping that issue, the fact of the matter is it is our job, yours, mine, all 9 of us, our job to implement our best gut, our best and analytical, our best financial, our best educational view on what is best for this district, the students of this district, and the residents of this district. And for me, none of those things were really championed by this program, not at this time, not this year, not with these numbers. And I think what it does do is something that I did put in my memo. It lays the groundwork for the swell of support we're going to need. We know that. We know when it's going to be needed. We have shown, thank you, Anna, for turning over every leaf, that this is important for us to gather and scrape together the funds we need to do what's necessary in this district. And so the fact that we have had this 8-meeting long, I don't know, Rajiv, I've lost count, discussion about this issue demonstrates that we really do, when we say we need funds, we need them. We're building a case. This is exhibit, I don't know, 55 on that case. And it's a good thing that we've had this discussion because it really does illustrate that our needs are great and that we're going to be coming back to the voters and asking them for support. And with that, I would like to move, I'm sorry, Anping, but I'll just make the motion. I'd like to move that the school committee opt out or reject the school choice for the 2024-2025 school year.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will definitely second it.
That is seconded. And just so everyone is aware, the motion has to pass to opt out of school choice. If the motion were to fail, and we don't have a opt-out decision by June 1st, then we would automatically opt in per DESI. So just so everyone's aware of what the logistics of how the law reads are. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Anping?
Okay, the writing's on the wall. We all see that. I want to say a few more things. I think I agree with Chris there saying at least the majority of email we received, it's a little bit opinion or a little bit passionate or critical, but not much numbers, data analysis. And I think, Chris, you did the same thing when we're talking about the budget, during the strike, the same situation, or even before that, it did analyze the city budget and try to find something to help the school system. That's very important. And talking about the message, by the way, Barry, you mentioned that the message, we should send a better message. And I believe before for the override and before strike, I think the Newton school system, superintendent and mayor, you guys did a lot of work. Even Cassie Smith here and did a lot of community work. I went to most of those school visits. I was listening. And well, people still say I didn't have enough information. Whether they are seriously looking for information, objective information, or looking for the information, sometimes favor to their opinions, me included. Sometimes when I see critical views, I don't want to read that, too much to read that. But if something I agree with, I will read with more interest. And that's human nature. I'm included. I don't want to point finger on anybody else, but that's a reality. Even though we spend so much time to share the facts, well, we all knew what happened during the strike, about sound emails. There were a few very sensible emails talking about all kind of facts rather than the emotion and feeling. So probably we did not have enough time. I agree with for this, especially after this tumultuous time. Emily's word, and I think that probably good word. I don't want to mention the other word, which is a little bit more painful. But I'm a little bit pessimistic now. As Chris said, if we do not really deliver this time, give a chance, and next year, I feel it's hard to bring up again. And I would think, okay, lastly, I want to say, regardless the result of this, I think we're sending a strong message to the committee. We are serious about the school budget. We try our best, school committee as a whole body, try our best to think how can we, increase our revenue. which it itself is a positive message, and tell community, starting from Superintendent Ann Nolan, doing everything possible to see if we can help, to increase our revenue and to find some additional financial support, which is a positive message right here. And because during the past few months, we heard some people say, you guys wasting all the money. And you could save money here, save money there. But this time, for sure, we are working hard to find the money, even though not much money. As I said, I want to say again, $50,000. That's good money. If you can hire a few school guidance counselors, social workers, psychologists, that help a great deal. So money does not come down from sky. We all know that. If we did not know that, now we know that. And we have to work real hard to get the financial support. So in that sense, I think this is good intention. I want to highlight this. And I thank Ann Nolan to start this, topic and force us and committee to debate on that. And that's very positive. So I want to, finish our deliberation on the positive note here. Thanks.
Okay. Any other thoughts? All right, we'll take a vote. Ward 1. The motion is to opt out of.
Yes equals no.
The motion is to opt out of school choice.
Yes.
Okay. Ward 2, no. Ward 3.
Absent.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6 is absent. Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 8.
Yes.
Okay, that is 1, 2, 3, 4.
Add one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Fuller.
No
I
problem.
apologize.
I'll
Ward-
add, Ward 9 votes yes.
Okay, so that is 6, 1, 1 abstention, and 1 absent. Okay, thank you. That was a respectful discussion. I appreciate it, and we are adjourned.
See you.